I'm just really angry at myself. Because you were the best. Like, why was I like that to you?
This is going to be an incredibly long video, as it goes over a lot of allegations and accusations made between several people. Please take heavy warning for the following things that will be discussed within this video. There will be mentions of SA and coercion, suicide, depression, physical assault, animal attacks, psychological abuse, discussions of eating disorders, fat phobia, and enabling of toxic behaviors. I'm probably actually missing a couple of content warnings here and there, but this, like I said, is going to be an incredibly long video. If at any point during the video I see that I'm coming across a section in which I probably might not have warned about, I will try to remember to insert a little content warning, either vocally or a little mouse click sound effect to showcase it on the screen. This is also going to be going in depth with a lot of screenshots and discussions of documents and Google documents and, you know, a bunch of information and evidence for the allegations that are going to be discussed. And I'm not going to read those things verbatim, word for word, right? I'm gonna summarize and do opinions and yada yada. It's commentary video, right? I will say, however, that I'm going to have as many screenshots on the screen as possible in any given moment when I'm discussing certain aspects of a document or any sort of statement or accusation. And so if you want to pause the video at any point to read the screenshots, feel free to do so. On just a brief silly note here, I'm going to be Americanizing some of the language used here for my own sanity. So things like going on holiday is going to be converted to things like vacation, etc. This won't take away from the context of the things discussed, but it'll simplify things for me since holiday means something completely different here. All things stated within this video are alleged and have not been proven in a court of law. Beyond reiterating the words of the accusers and the accused, everything within this video is a matter of either my opinion or the opinions of those that I'm sourcing, and nothing should be deemed as fact. Since this video is going to go into accusations between several people, please refer to the timestamps for who or what each section will be discussing. Thank you so much for joining in on this absolute mammoth of an iceberg. If at any time this becomes too much to handle, too overwhelming, please feel free to click off the video and return when you're able to. Prioritize your own mental health above everything else. The video can wait. When it comes to influencers or micro-celebrities online, it's common for issues relating to their personality or behavior to arise. We're kind of out of the, internet stage of claiming everything that was happening or going on were skits, right? This is partially due to the amount of eyes that are on them, and eventually a few vocal few will take issues with the content creator for things that they aren't really trying to hide, per se. These attempts at canceling a content creator don't really tend to work, though, as diehard fans of that person will defend them with rhetoric like, well, this isn't new, so why are you having a problem with it now? You should have known what you signed up for. Other times, however, a content creator's private life is used as a means to shed light onto who they really are behind the persona that they've crafted for the public consumption online. While it's a good thing, overall, for them to keep their personal lives and professional careers separate, it seems that the harder that they try to erase the concepts of themselves outside of the public perception, the worse they tend to be behind closed doors. And when allegations arise about creators like this, it's hard for them to defend themselves, as we can't be too sure of what is the truth and what's been made up for the sake of preserving their public image. Hey there, I'm here to interrupt your regularly scheduled entertainment. This is another one of my saga-style videos, I guess you can title it, similarly to the Illuminati one that I made before. This video is going to cover a very wide berth of information all along the same umbrella, and that is going to be the allegations against British commentary channel ImAllexx, how the allegations against him have impacted other creators, particularly iNabber, and other former collaborators of his. Mostly, this video is breaking down each of the documents or statements that has dropped about the involved parties, their responses to said allegations against them, and other commentary people thoughts of the situation, and of course my thoughts. I already warned that this is going to be incredibly long. I'm warning again. But if you were someone who got overwhelmed by how many videos kept coming out every other day about Alex and Fraser when things were first going down, this should be a relatively good place to learn what happened and the general public opinion on everything in just one big condensed video, so you don't have to like search 1,000 different videos and, you know, timelines, yada yada, right? I'm going to try my best to like condense it as much as possible in like, God, I don't know, 7 hours. I tried really, really hard not to jump to conclusions during any of these document breakdowns, but it's difficult as there's always like room to question things when it comes to situations like these, since we are completely outside observers who know absolutely nothing about what really happened between these people, and we're being fed information from very understandably biased sources. This is mostly prevalent during the document war between Fraser, iNabber, and his ex-girlfriend. Keep in mind the content warnings in the beginning of the video. Like I said, I'll try to like paste up any ones that I might have missed. Refer to the timestamps to skip around as needed. Let's say that you already know about the like ImAllexx stuff, but you've never heard of the iNabber stuff. I'm trying my very best to make this video like as convenient as possible to like skip around and learn what information that you need to learn about. So firstly, for people completely 100% in the dark, never heard of any of these people, we're going to start off with who is ImAllexx. It should come as no surprise if you're familiar with my content in general that I tend to be severely out of the loop with a lot of like online situations, both good and bad situations. I don't know much about popular trending memes, and I don't really branch out of like in terms of finding new content creators to watch. I don't really branch out of my comfort zones. I'm kind of a very horrible creature of habit in that regard. So when I first started seeing a bunch of videos popping up about the allegations against ImAllexx, I had to take a step back before committing to this video idea in general, because I had no idea who this person was, despite the strangely incredibly high subscriber count and him making content roughly kind of in the same sphere as me. I will note here that it's possible I've seen content from this creator in the past but just don't remember it, because I mean, when you watch one white dude, you've watched a million white dudes, if I'm being completely honest. His face looks really familiar, it does, but again, I can't really determine if that's because I've been seeing it so frequently with all of these like allegation videos in the last couple of like months and weeks, or it's because someone showed me a video of him in the past, or again, because generic white guy face. I don't know. ImAllexx is a commentary type content creator, leaning more towards like reactionary style commentary as far as I've seen, but maybe that's because I was flipping through between two different channels. I don't know. Him doing reactionary type content might not have always been the case though, but it's what I'm seeing in the more recent videos. As of scripting this, he has almost 2 million subscribers, although that number has gone down rather drastically since the allegations first came out about him. Notably, he's also friends with quite a handful of other commentary channels, particularly iNabber, aka Fraser, and all of these other channels would often collaborate with him, which is why it's really notable on why, like, I titled this video about how, like, the allegations against him has kind of ruined British commentary, because he collabed with a ton of people all the time, and I'll get more into why that's relevant a little later on. When I first started seeing videos about ImAllexx is over and he is insane popping up all over my recommendation feed, I ignored most of it, since I wasn't really in the headspace to deal with what I had initially incorrectly assumed to be another situation involving a minor. So I was surprised to find out that the allegations, while they are still horrific and very terrible, they weren't actually the type that I was first anticipating. On June 15th, Alice Hez made accusations of abuse towards ImAllexx on Twitter, posting, "Here's my statement on the situation I've been scared to speak out on. It's best it was made public how horrible this person with a platform is. I'd hate to see another woman go through this. Please read the statement first before continuing." Along with this tweet is a Google Drive with a document a little over 80 pages long, and a handful of videos and an audio recording detailing the abuse she had undergone while in a relationship with Alex in March of 2023, along with evidence of her accusations against him. As I've done a little more research into this story, it turns out that this document wasn't the start of the situation, but rather Alice had actually been making concerning TikTok videos and cryptic tweets alluding to an abusive relationship she had recently gotten out of. It didn't take long for people to put two and two together to realize that she was talking about Alex before she had even name-dropped him.
This began actually stirring a couple of months ago in regards to Alice, when Alice posted a TikTok that was just two pictures. I'll put them on screen right now. Then people began commenting, asking if the person that she was talking about in this TikTok was ImAllexx. And essentially what started happening was she was kind of liking comments, which was sort of confirming everything.
Her document opens with expressing how difficult it is for her to come forth with these allegations against Alex, which is pretty standard thing for a lot of people to put as an opening statement for situations like this. I actually just want to take this moment to clarify that a lot of survivors of abuse will wait a very long time before coming forward with any statements and accusations against the people that abuse them, so this is by no way an indicator of a lie as a lot of people seem to think it is. An unfortunate reality of our world is that victims are very rarely believed, partly due to a very small minority of people making false accusations, and I mean very, very small percentage. That isn't the only reason why victims aren't believed, but those kinds of situations definitely do not help anyone when they try to come forward with their stories. It's especially hard for victims to come forward when they feel endangered due to either the risk of physical harm or the accused having like a higher social status than the victim. This plays into the mindset of, I know this person, they couldn't have possibly done this thing that they're being accused of, and they're only clout chasing and those kind of things. It's just because a person isn't doing harm onto you personally doesn't mean that that person isn't capable of doing harm onto others. Unless you are around that person nonstop, you just don't know what they're capable of. And in some cases, you don't know what they're capable of even if you are around them constantly, as we will get into more later. As I'm going to be breaking down this initial document, I'm going to forewarn that a lot of this upcoming section is going to sound very repetitive, but it all boils down to, wow, Alex sure is a piece of shit. But since a lot of these texts are fairly similar in nature, a lot of my points, like I said, are going to sound similar and similar and similar, but I think that really only is going to go towards painting the picture of just what kind of abuse Alice was suffering from and just the build up and build up and build up until the inevitable, breakup happens. I'm breaking down this document mostly for the people who either don't want to read it themselves for whatever reason, or the people that just don't have time to go through it on their own. Due to the length of this video, I imagine most people will have it like as background noise, so if there's anything that I need to add as an image or text in addition to the screenshots of the document, I'll insert like the mouse click noise to indicate a very significant change on screen. But like I said before, if at any point you want to read the screenshots that I'm like covering, feel free to pause the video at any time. The beginning of Alice's document details the first stages of abuse, which is to isolate your partner from their support network. She states that he would expect her to be able to drop everything she was doing in order to pay attention to him, and that as a measure to appease him, she worked less and included him within her friend group more. She states that arguments would turn extreme, with him calling her on a video chat in order to just scream at her and attempt to trigger her to hurt herself. I have a shared opinion that a lot of other people who have also covered this situation have, but I think it's very telling and kind of bold of Alex to feel the need to turn on his microphone and camera setup so that Alice could physically see him screaming and threatening her. It's kind of like a really weird like sense of power and control that he seemed to have over her during their relationship. Because if it was someone with a little more self-confidence in themselves, they would have just hung up on him, right? I think this just goes to show that abuse victims often suffer from some sort of brainwashing from their abuser. Following the initial statements here is a collection of text screenshots of, if I'm being completely honest, it seems like a lot of like really nonsensical conversations without much context. I can understand that a lot of people's frustration now looking through this document, because I've heard, around from other videos that a lot of people have issues with the lack thereof of context in regards to a lot of these conversations that Alice is trying to show as evidence of the abuse. Which, don't get me wrong, I do believe that a lot of this does show abuse in, the way that Alex talks to her. However, I am also going to say that Alex does not seem kind of all there in the mind, really, when it comes to like these conversations, because a lot of these, I know we're missing a lot of context and what builds up and leads to these conversations, but even without context, you should be able to piece together a little bit of what a conversation is about, right? At points such as this screenshot in particular, in which Alex is just saying, fuck you and the R slur, there's not much to go on to why this is happening. There's a lot of chunks of conversations cut from these screenshots that make following the conversations incredibly difficult. Additionally, as far as I'm browsing, there's no dates on these screenshots, and the only indicator we have to the passage of time is the top of the screenshots with like the clock differing and the battery percentages going up and down. Then you get this next screenshot of Alex saying he wanted her to ask him to come over, but also previously he was complaining that he wasn't a mind reader for what I presume is a different conversation. While these might not have been connected, I do want to point out that it's a little bit ridiculous to get upset that you don't know what a person wanted, I'm not a mind reader, while also getting upset that the person didn't know what you wanted by saying, I wanted you to ask me to come over. Like, it's just a certain level of entitlement and double standards that Alex is holding Alice to, but not holding himself to. Which, again, with minimal context to, you know, the build up to these conversations, it ends up just looking like Alex is, like, starting fights and picking fights and arguing just for the sake of arguing. Which, this kind of behavior is something that you really only see from people in their early 20s when they're crashing out of the honeymoon phase of the relationship and they're really not sure how to cope with, like, the impending, like, mundanity of their lives, right? The butterflies are gone. It's no longer the sickly sweet giggling of, no, you hang up first. And just for the record, I did look up that, you know, they are in their, like, mid to early 20s. So if this wasn't an abuse case, as we come to find out later, like, it just... two incompatible people that realized that they were incompatible without wanting to, you know, either work on the relationship to get better or, you know, break it off, right? If we accept that what Alice said in the beginning of this document as a fact, that Alex wanted to cut her off from her friends, the beginning stages of that seem to be highlighted in these messages, with him just stating that he wanted to feel like he mattered more in the relationship. But it's hard to say because of how cropped all the conversations are. I could feel the frustration within these screenshots in particular, as in one moment Alex is saying he wanted Alice to ask to see him, essentially, while then later becoming upset that she did ask, saying that she was backing him into a corner by making him decide if she could or not, which... I wish I knew why these screenshots are just so fragmented. Why is Alex saying here that Alice is setting him up? Setting him up for what and how? Is there more to that situation, or is this like a gaslighting tactic, which is common among abusers? There's a break in the screenshots for a text paragraph reiterating that Alex would frequently scream at her during video calls and that he was stalking one of his ex-girlfriends, including that he had nudes of that ex on his phone. More screenshots of Alex apparently threatening to refollow people he had unfollowed for Alice, which is a very strange manipulation tactic, honestly, following the mindset that he was trying to cut her off from her support network, saying things like, I'll unfollow these people for you that you don't like if you unfollow people I don't like. It's a sinister way of coaxing someone into doing something that you want by disguising it as a mutual agreement. There's another break in the screenshots for more text by Alice, as she details that Alex would frequently downgrade her, break up with her, and then beg her to take him back, and would love bomb her in order to gain her forgiveness for this behavior, and rinse-repeat the cycle over and over again. She details how she wished she just would have left, but kept falling for his manipulation, believing in a false hope that he could change his behavior if she asked him to, that she could change him if she was just good enough for him, which is a very sad mindset to have, and plays in part, again, to that sense of brainwashing that victims tend to have. I wish there were more resources for people in relationships to access so that they could see what makes a relationship abusive or not. Many people stay in horrific situations for far longer than they should because they get manipulated into thinking harmful rhetoric like, if they don't hit you, it's not abuse, and they were just having a bad day, they aren't normally like this. Please learn to recognize some patterns and behaviors of abusive relationships, such as the cycle of abuse. Yes, the thought of, they aren't normally like this, is a part of that abuse cycle. When the abuse cycle begins, it's typically a gradual progression and not something that's easy to spot immediately. The cycle will begin with smaller things before beginning to escalate, small passive-aggressive things in passing, things purposely done to elicit a response, even if that response is initially just confusion. This is to gauge how the victim will respond over time to abuse tactics. Abuse, at its core, is a method of controlling another person by any means they think will work. When we hear things about abusive relationships, we are conditioned to think of physical assaults and sexual battery, but abuse can be psychological, verbal, and even financial. Following larger outbursts, an abuser will often try to win back their victim with love bombing, which tends to be just overt acts of affections and promises to change in the future. This behavior can include things like excusing the behavior, saying I love you and it hurt me more than you, materialistic goods, and concern over the victim's physical health and well-being if the incident was physical in nature. This kind of behavior leads into the final stages of the cycle before it resets, which is often referred to as a honeymoon phase since it tends to mirror behaviors in new couples that are trying to be on their best behavior towards their partners. This stage is also what tends to get abuse victims trapped in their situations, since they have all these happy times they can reference as being some of the best aspects of the relationship, since they probably were in comparison to the rest of the abuse that they endured. It wasn't all bad. They aren't normally like this. They just snapped. They were sorry after. All of these things are by design. It might be a little controversial to say it, but no one victim blames an abuse victim more than the victim when they're still trapped in their abusive situation. The first step of getting help, after all, is admitting that there's a problem. I implore you, if you feel like you might be in one of these cycles, reach out to a trusted source for help. Most major cities have a domestic abuse shelter, and there are domestic abuse hotlines you can also try to contact. Just know if you feel trapped and hopeless in your situation that you're not alone, and the faintest light of hope should be the knowledge that others have escaped and survived, and that means that you can too. More screenshots follow the last text intermission with more incidents of Alex losing his mind at nonsensical things like a perceived bad attitude from Alice and not being thanked properly for picking up a food order. She explains some context to a few of these screenshots, citing her bad depression and how she's made massive efforts to not let her mental health impact the way Alex perceived her, partly due to Alex having tantrums over her apparently not acting the way he wanted her to. Also to note in these screenshots, Alice cropped the name out of the top, but people who understand Google Drives better than I do managed to uncover that it was cropped out and appears to be Alex's name saved in Alice's phone being a racial slur. No idea, but it doesn't really take away from any of the abuse that she suffered. I just thought that it would be kind of remiss not to mention the fact that Alice and Alex both equally used racial slurs towards one another. We can see glimmers of another abuse tactic playing out in these screenshots as we continue scrolling, something called DARVO. DARVO stands for Deny, Attack, Reverse Victim, and Offender, and it kind of self-explanatory means that when an abuser is confronted from their actions, they will first deny the behavior, blame their victim for the situation that they're in, and frame the situation as if their victim was the aggressor in the situation all along. Like I said, without further context of these screenshots, we get glimpses of what could be DARVO, with Alice stating that Alex would deny apologizing to her and he would only concede because he would deem her to be a freak or the situation pointless, putting the blame on her and excusing his behavior as just a means to shut her up. These screenshots continue, adding in Alex telling Alice to die before switching over to sections in which Alice begins to say hurtful things back to Alex. More images follow of Alex insisting on breaking it off with Alice for her to respond with things like, "This is tiny," and "You don't mean that," in response to Alex saying he wanted to break up again. Like I said before, it's common in abusive situations that it's really hard for the pair to be separated due to many factors, but if the opportunity presents itself to leave, even if it is abruptly, you need to take it. I know it will be painful and stressful, but there are systems in place to help you. Your safety and the safety of any potential dependents that you have is also very important. Editing Finn here. I just want to insert this segment here for a little more clarification on my thought process going on here. I know I mentioned before that this entire section going over the screenshots, it was going to sound very repetitive because there's not a lot of context between the screenshots boiling down to like what the conversations were about as a whole. Yes, I do understand that there are snippets of the conversation that you can gather from the screenshots that we are shown, such as Alex spamming join, 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 join. You know, that's supposed to signify of the fact that he wants Alice to drop everything that she's doing right in the moment in order to pander to whatever he wants at the moment. In addition, there's other screenshots that you can also garner other aspects of conversation, like him continuously throwing temper tantrums every other screenshot that Alice had either hung up on him because he was being a dickhead to her, or the fact that Alice either wasn't picking up like the call quick enough or she was quote unquote talking over him. And I don't think I really mentioned it anywhere in my script, but I do want to like make note of the fact that other people that I have collaborated with Alex in the past have all mentioned that Alex has a very bad tendency to kind of like steal the spotlight, so to say, in which he tries to make the entire conversation about himself or his thoughts and feelings during like collaboration projects. And a lot of the time people say that they can't really get any words in edgewise. When I find the screenshot, I'll like insert it here. I think it was something to do with like maybe King Annie or something like that. I don't remember, but someone had mentioned the fact that Alex tended to make all of the collaborations about himself.
Nicholas Yorio made a video where he talked about kind of like how much ImAllexx took the mic, literally, with calculating that 56% of the podcast runtime alone was just Alex yapping.
Which I can understand why then at any point in which Alice could have voiced her own opinion on any subject matter, no matter what it was at the time, whether it was, you know, YouTube related, personal matters, relationship stuff, whatever, he would get very pissed off because it wasn't his idea, his thought process, his words, his own voice that he was listening to. Because Alex has proven through this entire situation that he appears to be very narcissistic, and if things don't go his way, the way he wants them to, immediately he throws an absolute temper tantrum. He didn't want an actual relationship with Alice, in my opinion. I think that he wanted an attractive yes man who's been lobotomized to just go along with everything he says. And the fact that she wasn't sunshine and rainbows 24/7 to just tell him everything he wanted to hear in his heart of hearts, that's when things went down the shithole. It's also why, in my opinion, all of his friendships also ended up falling out, you know, even prior to, like, the allegations coming out against him. As many people have pointed out, they either used to live with him and, you know, got the fuck out of Dodge because he was weird, or the fact that they collaborated with him once or twice and realized that, you know, he's very hard to work with, etc. It all boils down to, at this point, Alex's former friends all had their own thoughts and opinions that didn't 100% align with what Alex wanted. So, as you surmise, he threw a temper tantrum about it. I think it's a little odd that Alex actually has this, like, grand sense of self, as it seems, you know, the narcissism. And I don't mean narcissistic personality disorder, because I know that people have an issue with, like, the armchair diagnosis. I mean narcissism as in, like, you literally just love yourself a little too much, you know? I actually think that Alex's entire persona that he, like, put out about being, like, an internet sensation is actually a really big sign of insecurity to me, because I was just looking through the people that he frequently collaborated with for the most part, and all things considered, like, besides, like, a select, like, few, like, 2 or 3 people on the list here, it actually seems like Alex, subscriber count-wise, is actually, like, kind of middle of the road. Like, he's not, like, bottom of the barrel, so to say, in terms of numbers, but he, by far, is not the most popular one among the crew. So, I think that probably pissed him off quite a bit, especially gathering how much he had an issue with people not taking his advice in particular to be popular or better or more successful. I wonder how often he would give advice to the people that have more subscribers than him because he thinks that his way is the right way because of however long it took him to, like, raise through the ranks, so to speak. He probably just wanted to feel more important than what he really was. And him trying to, quote-unquote, help those more popular than him is actually something that we kind of see later on during my, like, public opinions kind of section, so just stay tuned for that. Some of these screenshots do seem to have, like, some context clue, like the mention of a HelloFresh partnership, but most of these are presented kind of randomly. I believe that if she hasn't already, Alice should be working with a counselor of some kind to break down what led up to each incident she endured in her relationship, as I feel it would be a good start in her healing process to know what led up to each outburst and how it was not her fault, like, at all. The next chunk of text goes into how Alex would blur the lines between his personal life and professional life, with Alice stating that he tried to control the content that she was producing under the guise of helping her become successful. She states that she didn't want to discuss work-related things with Alex, but he just wouldn't listen to her. Alex seems particularly upset not only that Alice didn't appear to be taking his advice for content creation, but that his friends apparently also weren't taking his advice either, which is odd. Taking this immediately in bad faith due to the allegations against him, it feels like this is less of a desire to help his girlfriend and friends, and even peers, but rather just an ego boost for himself. He doesn't want to associate with those not on the same level of success to him, and so when they don't take his advice, or possibly if his advice isn't working the way that he thought it would because he sounds fucking nuts most of the time, he blames them for being losers in comparison to himself. It's very odd when internet micro-celebrities seem to be even more out of touch with reality than big-name household celebrities tend to be, because when an influencer is out of touch, it feels much more their fault. Bigger celebrities like actors or royalty tend to need teams of people to manage their day-to-day lives for their own protection, but internet influencers don't tend to need the same treatment due to being contained within their own particular niche genre online. As the screenshots continue, so does the vitriolic language against Alice. It's common to see situations like this escalate over time, as the abuser becomes more comfortable with their own behavior because the victim is just enduring it. The longer a victim tends to stay with their abuser, the worse the abuse tends to get, which frighteningly often leads to severe bodily harm or even death, which I will touch in a little more later, but I would not put it past Alex to be capable of killing her. Even though I do acknowledge that it would have been more of an invasion of privacy, I wish Alice would have included some context examples of the contrast between Alex being nice to her as opposed to just all the messages of him being completely nasty to her. Was he only this nonsensical when he was being a dickhead, or was he always this nonsensical even when he was perceived being nice? I think that thought process, though, is me being a little unhelpful and more nosy than anything, but I'm concerned about what he was doing that was so splendid to hide that aspect of himself, especially since I saw other video clips of him insulting her publicly in the guise of jokes. Was he ever actually nice to her, or did she just assume all the times he was a foul piece of shit to her with just quirky jokes until it got to be too late to back out of the relationship cleanly? When someone shows you who they are, believe them. There needs to be a point to jokes. Calling someone names and being derogatory isn't a joke, it's just gauging your reaction to the behavior. It's why there's a common phrase around where I live that if you allow one Nazi into your bar, it becomes a Nazi bar, because they're just going to invite all their friends. If you positively reinforce these dangerous mindsets, the quote-unquote jokes turn into genuine disrespect. Worse yet is when these kind of jokes are not mentioned or called out by those around you, because it invites others to also disrespect you as well. Please stand up for yourself if you find yourself in this kind of situation. Next, we have a couple of images showing Alice exhibiting a trauma response that goes pretty unmentioned in a lot of talks of abusive relationships. Typically, we are taught things like fight or flight when it comes to being presented with potentially dangerous situations, or the situation our minds can interpret as being dangerous. But there's actually two more responses in these scenarios called freeze and fawn. Freeze is the deer in the headlights kind of response, literally so scared you can't do anything, but fawning is the response in which you beg and grovel for the approval of the person putting you in the situation that you're in. This is classically mistaken as something called Stockholm Syndrome, because people couldn't comprehend why hostages would act nice towards their captors. This is a self-preservation technique. If you get on the abuser's good side, they might not hurt you. It's after these screenshots, about page 33 out of 82, that we start to get more and more text breaks between the messages to elaborate on situations unfolding, which is good because it adds a lot of needed context that I've been asking about between these conversations. The more context we get, the more vile Alex becomes through these screenshots, like this situation in which Alice had opened up to him about a traumatic experience during their vacation, only for him to turn it against her and blame her for ruining the trip. A common quote going around is him saying that he just didn't want to hear what other guys had done to her. Which, if there was ever a time just to throat punch that little motherfucker, it would have been right there. At page 37 of the document, Alice starts showing screenshots of herself pushing back against Alex's attitude towards her, which is a good thing, despite the chunk of text warning that it was not pretty, or wasn't pretty, or however she phrased it. Sometimes, when you're being constantly disrespected, my own personal opinion, I think it's okay to be a bitch back. Then we get to the messages I've seen in everybody's thumbnails already. Alex saying he was going to kill Alice and break her neck and stuff. These are pretty extreme, but with just the text messages at this point in the scripting process, these are a little more than just toddler temper tantrums of a man-child. Are they potentially dangerous? Yes, especially if they are living together, but at this point, that didn't appear to be the case yet. But keep these threats in mind as I detail on why I believe that Alex has the potential to cause serious harm to Alice. Reading all of these with Alex continuously throwing around insults, telling Alice to hurt herself, and now these threats of violence, all I think about is, what a fucking loser. Then the next page details a cycle reset as Alex is apologizing for his behavior, and Alice now informing us that after the argument that apparently had these threats of physical violence, they moved in together. And I'm just, at that point, like when I was reading the document for the first time, I was just absolutely fucking gobsmacked. Moving in with someone like this is completely baffling to an onlooker, and I completely understand when loved ones of abuse victims are confused on why they stay with an abuser so long, especially when they had ample opportunity to leave the situation prior to it escalating to the extremes. But like I said before, abuse victims are often brainwashed by their abusers. As Alice starts to detail how things became physical as soon as she moved in with Alex, it breaks my heart reading the messages between her and her parents. It's very strange to me that her parents just seem kind of casual about what she is telling them. I know I shouldn't really speculate about like the relationship between herself and her family because every family situation is different, but this nonchalant, "Oh, you deserve better, sweetie," kind of response is actually kind of blowing my mind. Is Alice leaving out the parts of her parents wanting to come and just kill this dude for her? Any offers for her to come back home until she's safe again, perhaps? Or them showing up and breaking down the door to get her? I know that technically she's an adult and maybe it's my like American viewpoint speaking, but it's just really strange. Did Alice at some point convince her parents not to worry or attempt to help her in some fashion, regardless of the very troubling messages she would send them? How far did this brainwashing go due to the abuse that she was suffering? Following the messages to her parents, Alice shows photos of the damage that Alex had caused to her belongings when she was attempting to leave. Her photos showcase broken computer monitors, and she further details that he also smashed apart her keyboard and also broke her camera. A few screenshots prior, she also cited that he would break other belongings of hers, like her glasses for example, and pretend that he didn't do anything and didn't know where they went, and even help her look for missing items only to make fun of her when she discovered that he broke the object and even threw it away in the trash. This kind of behavior is another obvious aspect of the abuse that is often excused by involved parties as the aggressor merely losing their temper or it happened in the heat of the moment type of thing, but I will reiterate once again that this behavior is purposeful and deliberately malicious to the victim. If asked, I have no doubts that Alice would say that she couldn't recall any time in which Alex smashed apart his own property during one of his tantrums. The act of destroying the property of a partner in an abusive situation is a sign of escalating violence. It tends just to be the beginning stages prior to more serious actions. They didn't want to just smash your stuff, it was just a temporary redirect from hurting you. Which I do know that Alice has mentioned at this point that Alex had physically harmed her at least twice at this point. But remember that abuse happens in waves and cycles. Just because he physically hurt her once or twice doesn't mean that him smashing apart her property wasn't also a redirect from more physical abuse towards her. The next section of the document goes into post-breakup things, like Alex groveling and begging for Alice to not only take him back, but give him the opportunity to apologize for his behavior. Note the gaslighting tactics in which he highlights that he feels that they both did things wrong to one another, even if his was worse. Also, as a brief moment of levity, let's clap for the man-child who thinks that cleaning up after abusing someone, taking out the trash even, is the way to win someone back. Congrats, bud, you did a very basic adult thing to do. In the midst of these post-breakup messages, Alice also references that in addition to just generally not leaving her alone via text and messaging on a variety of social media accounts, including targeting an account directed at her pet cat after he was blocked like literally everywhere else, he would escalate to more stalker-like tendencies like sending her unsolicited physical gifts like flowers, plushies, and even his own clothing that smelled like him in case she missed him that much. At this point in the reactionary type script that I was doing, I was really hoping that she would just get a fucking restraining order. Even during these continual messages of Alex begging for Alice to take him back, we can see part of his disgusting behavior slipping through the cracks where his gaslighting is weak, like saying that despite what he did to her, she needed to just let it go. It's only after we see Alice mention that she had a lot of stuff on Alex, namely all of these screenshots, videos, and audio of him being a piece of shit to her, but also to his friends behind their backs, that we start to see what I interpret as an authentic panic from Alex. From this point, I knew that he knew what was going to happen. He knew that these allegations would come out eventually, which is why he hasn't responded yet. He probably saved up money from this point on with these messages onward to kind of like act as a failsafe in order to lie low for a while or even contact legal help. He continues to try very desperately to downplay the harm of the relationship, trying and failing to flirt with Alice through this, like changing what she is saying, "My heart pounds out of my chest," in relation to her having anxiety over him due to PTSD from the relationship, and Alex saying, it's the same for me, but in relation to him being in love with her. As the groveling continues, he starts the sad anime monologue about himself, sending voice notes and videos, and I just want to touch on the section in which Alex says that he was convinced that they both would fix each other, and I just want to say, unsolicited, that you don't need to fix your partner. The whole concept of, I can fix them, is a media trope and is not intended for real people in real life. It's not your job to fix someone unless you are their licensed medical practitioner. If you're not their doctor, their therapist, their psychologist, their neurologist, their fucking dentist, you don't need to fix someone. Another notable thing through these messages is that after he's pretty done with begging for Alice to take him back, he then begins to beg her not to post anything about him, saying he wants them to just leave each other alone, which is a little ironic to me considering he appears to have been non-stop spamming Alice according to these screenshots. It's no longer about trying to make amends, even if it was amends in his twisted way. It's not even about the abuse cycle. He realized at this point that he fucked up. He cost himself his career. The one thing that he mentioned repeatedly in these messages, these voice notes, these videos, that he holds in extremely high regard, something that he had that made him feel superior to his peers, and something that he used to lord over his victim. It was only a matter of time before all of this information came out. Through the post-breakup messages, we see that Alice standing up for herself a lot more, which is ultimately a good thing in my opinion, to show him that he doesn't hold power over her anymore. She took another break between screenshots to again clarify that she wasn't proud of the language that she ended up using towards Alex during some of these messages, since he had desensitized her towards some of the more offensive words and phrases, which I guess there is a point to that, but at the same time, as an adult, like, even if you are around people that speak that kind of language pretty constantly, I think that you should be, mature enough to realize that you probably shouldn't echo the same sentiments, but heat of the moment kind of things, I guess. I am not in the position to say whether or not what she was doing is justified or not, which a lot of people seem to be of the opinion that her use of certain words and phrases are not justified even in this situation, but we're not here about that. It's hard for me to determine just how much time actually passed between these breakup, take me back, groveling messages and the next batch of screenshots, but the attitude between Alex and Alice shifts a bit. At some point, Alice apparently begins making vague posts on her social media about the abuse she endured with Alex, and in an effort to save face, as it seems people were starting to put the points together even without Alice formally announcing Alex's name yet in her post, Alex went back to her messages to try to first beg Alice to stop posting about the relationship, but it turns into Alex trying to accuse Alice of also hitting him during their relationship. Which, for the record, there is a thing called reactionary abuse, in which an abuse victim lashes out against the abuser in order to defend themselves. It's something that's often referred to in court cases and everything like that as mutual abuse, which it's up to your own interpretation how much you believe that that's actually a thing, or if it really is in just self-defense to the abuse that they were suffering. Alice shows context towards these accusations against herself by elaborating that Alex was hostile towards her cat, at one point apparently telling her that he was just going to snap its neck, and due to those threats, she was very wary of letting him near the cat. According to Alice, there was a physical altercation in which Alex was holding the cat and threatening to take it away, and he was apparently getting into Alice's face during the situation, and she pushed him away from her. She says that Alex is trying to twist this event by framing it as her punching him in the face over saying weird things about the cat. She then shows a screenshot of Alex saying that she had pushed him, not punched him, so I'm not really sure why he would even try to frame that event differently when she had proof of how this situation really happened. In fact, I wonder, does Alex just delete all of these messages? Was he not anticipating that Alice wasn't deleting things? Did he not know that she was saving all of these videos and voice notes, and every time that they were in a Discord call and him screaming at her? They say that when it comes to people who lie in excess, it becomes harder and harder for them to be able to determine what details they've told about the lie. I believe that's also true that people who lie in order to manipulate often forget the truth has already slipped through. Gaslighting really only works if there isn't more tangible proof of the truth already available. At the end of the document, Alice admits that there was an altercation that resulted in her slapping Alex in the face after he was screaming at her until she had a breakdown. I don't think this is the same incident in which he kicked her in the back as she was trying to leave, because she says she had gone back to him due to being scared. It's hard to know where on the timeline particularly anything really happened, as there's no dates on these screenshots for the most part that I noticed, only the occasional time. The document ends with Alice admitting that she is withholding some of her evidence in order to be able to use it for legal purposes later, but states that everything will be made public in time. Editing Finn here, about 2 weeks ago, Kavos uploaded a video in which he had actually reached out to Alice to ask about legal proceeding because she had reported Alex's behavior to the police and was basically inquiring if the police were the ones that told Alex not to respond or make any responses to the allegations online. And she says that apparently no, the police didn't tell him not to talk about it or anything like that because there's no big legal proceedings happening as of yet, as far as we're aware. She alleges that him being completely silent is of his own accord.
However, I reached out to Alice herself, the one who exposed Alex, to get some more clarity on this, and this is what was said. Said, "Hi Alice, I hope you're doing okay. Just messaging because I'm doing a follow-up on ImAllexx stuff. Clearly he is choosing to be silent right now, but I'm curious if that is due to an official investigation or not. Just want to make sure I verify everything, not here trying to spread false information. Hope to hear from you soon." Alex responded, "Hey, since it was reported before I came out publicly, I haven't heard from them or Alex. I've asked for an update a few days ago, and I'm waiting to hear from anyone. But I assume his silence could be from them contacting him. But I doubt I can confirm until I have an update from them. Sorry." I said, "That's okay. Just wanted to confirm that was the case. Appreciate the quick response. Caught me while I'm active. I'm confirm that for you when I'm updated." I said, "Thank you." Alice then responded saying, "Okay, so from what I've now got knowledge of, he hasn't been advised to be quiet. He's just doing that on his own. My report was just to make them aware of what he's doing and put him on record so future partners can see what he's done and is like, using Claire's law. Knowing Alex, he's gone to retreat with his parents. I don't know."
Now, I'm not saying that there was no, other parties recommending that he didn't respond, like a PR department or friends and family, etc., etc., but as far as Alice is aware, there's been no, legal sense of telling him to shut his face, basically. Which, as much as I complained about it throughout, the course of scripting and reacting towards the document, I guess it all makes sense why there wasn't more context given with a lot of these situations. After the long document, Alice also included audio and video files to help prove her accusations against Alex. Every time I refreshed the drive's page, the order of those files changed, so I'm just going to review them based on the order that I viewed them originally. The first video that I viewed was of Alex chastising Alice for something, citing that she was only able to do something because she didn't have as much to lose as he does because he views himself as an honest-to-God internet celebrity.
Massive issues there. And you think you can just fucking ignore them because what's the worst that can happen? I don't know. Your boyfriend's a fucking famous internet celebrity and doesn't trust these people because he has to keep his circle small. Because you might not have anything to fucking lose because your life might be down the fucking drain, but I still have quite a lot that I would like to fucking give. You're making it incredibly fucking hard for me. Just like Lewis did. I fucking hate all of you. You guys are fucking I can't make any videos with Paul Breach.
This is another instance in which I wish that there was a little more context to this snippet of conversation. What had Alice done that sparked this lecture? Or perhaps what hadn't she done that sparked all of this? I understand that Alex thought of his way of making content as the only way to make content, but this conversation kind of sounded like something happened and Alex was concerned with the information coming to light. Presumably that Alice was associating with someone whom Alex thought was going to cause her to get into drama, which of course this could and probably is an instance of Alex controlling who Alice was friends with or collabed with, generally limiting her work opportunities for the general sake of remaining the more popular creator, but also for the sake of her not growing and earning money and making a career for herself, generally becoming financially dependent on him eventually. Regardless of if this was stated with any form of genuine concern, which is doubtful, he ruins that notion by bringing himself into it. This conversation switched the focus from any possible ramifications she could have had by association and flipped it to being about how her choices would affect him as an internet celebrity. He isn't upset because she's putting her own career in danger. No. He's mad that his would be on the line because of her actions. Any bit of sincerity that he could have had for her and her decision to associate with whomever they're currently talking about is completely lost when he starts insulting her, saying things like, "Your life is down the fucking drain." The second video is scrolling through an example of Alex spam messaging Alice, begging to be unblocked and for her to talk to him. Based on the language of these texts, this probably took place after they broke up. Or one of their breakups, I should say. I feel bad for Alice in this situation because it's hard to have someone harass you across multiple platforms. Another been there, done that kind of situation. It's borderline stalking behavior because there's no real escape from someone on social media if they are persistent enough. You can block them, they can make new accounts. You can make new accounts and they could find them, but also making new accounts poses another issue for people like Alice. This situation is not between two random people online. It would be a lot easier if that was the case. This is between two people who make their living off of being content creators. If Alice took the route of making new accounts to escape from Alex's persistent harassment, it poses a risk to her income because she would have to build her audience back up and regain the ability to monetize her content. When you're trying to avoid the attention of someone like Alex, You wouldn't be able to depend on your previous fan base on your new account because that'll just make it easier for the unwelcomed individual to find you again and start the cycle all over. This new era of digital stalking and harassment doesn't have as good of protections in place as physical in-person stalking and harassment. Not that those protections do a ton of good in most cases anyway, unfortunately. So it's not only scary for someone enduring this behavior, but also just exhausting. The third video I viewed was another Discord call between Alex and Atlas, and this call is, again, nonsensical, but this time I feel that it would remain nonsensical even with more context added to the call. The basics of this call is just Alex stating that since people can't understand him when he gives them advice, that's why he is a professional and they're not.
What judgmental is, I think I may have said, like, 100 times, to the point where it's actually really hard to follow what I'm saying, because it's so flexible. I've gone, you could do this, but you might be able to do that, but you might be able to do that, you might be able to do this, and this might work, but you might be able to do that, and it sounds fucking mental. I don't even understand how you could possibly actually follow along to it. I like most of my friends struggle to actually understand what I'm saying, but that's why I'm a professional and you're all not. And then when you go, I don't like this, it's not.
This is just another example of him using his success as a way to belittle not only Alice, but also his friends and peers that he also apparently tried to help in the past. And I'm just saying, being a shitty teacher doesn't mean that your friends are beneath you because they don't understand what the hell you're talking about. It's a weird, and I'd say rather special form of entitlement to acknowledge yourself that you know that you don't make sense when giving someone advice and still think that makes you better than other people. And I really, really hate to break this to Alex, but success on social media has very little to do with someone's actual intelligence, which is what I think Alex is failing to comprehend. Success online is due to a lot of factors, and yeah, depending on your niche, it could have something to do with how smart you are or how smart you sound, but that's not all. First and most importantly, it tends to be your entertainment value. If you are boring, people won't stick around to watch your content. Things like your appearance and sound of your voice can also be a factor in that, but then you start to get more into the individual preferences of the audience that consumes your content. But beyond everything, beyond how entertaining you are at presenting your content, being successful online is a big luck game if a particular website's algorithm will push out your content to people. You can be doing everything quote-unquote correctly as far as any social media class would tell you. Entertaining content, great editing, you're aesthetically pleasing, you sound nice, you can have the best equipment, the best thumbnails ever, and your SEO is amazing. Algorithm shadow bans you from day one and you never find success. Sometimes it is about you, but more often it's just luck. Just because Alex found the luck that he needed in order to start his career doesn't make him godlike for having a social media career. And yes, I do actually consider being able to collab with certain people to boost your career as a clout chaser as a touch of luck. The next thing in the drive is an audio file of Alex, and it's really hard to listen to. I don't think it's that long, given that I tend to watch 6-hour documentaries here on YouTube, but my god, it drags, so it feels a lot longer than it is. For the most part, the audio file is just rambling about how sorry he is for how he treated Alice and outlining different instances in which he was purposely sabotaging the relationship because he knew that she would let him get away with this type of behavior.
Sorry, my phone cut off. It wasn't acceptable behavior, like in any way, shape or form. It was insane. Like, I guess I've just been stuck in that cycle for so long that I felt like I could do no wrong. I felt like I was the fucking, I look at me, I do all this fucking work and I do everything and I try and do this and, just nobody's appreciative and, I know you appreciated it and I know that you appreciate the effort that I used to put in. And then I just stopped because I had you and you're my girlfriend and we lived together and the more further we got for our relationship, the less effort I put in. And if it wasn't for you leaving, I might never ever have changed my ways. I might have just continued on like that. At the end of the day, the only thing that's important is that I didn't listen to you. You were right. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. I was impossible to work with. I didn't make it easy. I constantly thought inwards about myself and not about you and what was going on. I didn't make any attempts to change. I didn't make any attempts to fix my life. I made excuses. And it got to the point where I wanted to be alone, because if I was alone, nobody could tell me that I was fucking up and I was doing anything wrong. And for the first week that you weren't here, I just spent the entire week doing nothing. And after that week, I realised just kind of like how fucked up my life was, and I have made attempts to try and fix it. I have a schedule, I take out the bins, I look after the cats. I like a functioning person. I go out for my bike ride. I've been sorting out my doctor's appointment, even though it's bloody hard in the middle of fucking nowhere. I am just like so frustrated because I've been doing all of that, but then I've been getting on with you, and instead of like apologising, I've been trying to just be like, oh no, look, I'm good now. Like I'm perfectly fine now. I'm like a person. Everything's great. And I realise that must come across as like so dismissive to you, or also like why is he doing that stuff now? Why is he being like this now? Why couldn't he have been like this back then? And then you get upset or angry, which is fine and understandable, or I do something to upset and anger you, like following some fucking idiot on Twitter or Instagram, some woman, and yeah, you're saying like, oh, this guy's like he's just a fucking cunt, and he's being a cunt, and he's not stopping being a cunt, and he's not gonna apologize for what I did. He's not gonna try and make it work with me. He just wants me to be here. He doesn't want to lose me. I was trying to be like too cool and nonchalant at points, and then I would let it slip how uncool and how not well I was taking everything, and by that I mean my behaviour. I haven't been lashing out at you because of the fact that you left me, but lashing out at you because of the fact that I didn't fix my stuff. And I think what's worse, I'll be completely honest here, because I don't want to leave anything off the table at this point, is that like I generally had a conversation like with my friends a few months ago just about like how much I feel like I've just like I don't feel good about myself, and I would wake up a lot of the times when I was with you, I think I knew that I like didn't deserve to still be with you, and instead of fixing it, I was just like, oh, I've already fucked it anyway. I became worse. Like I sabotaged it, and it was intentional because I knew that I was being shitty. And I just thought, oh, it's already too late, and it's really fucking piss poor. Obviously, it wasn't as clean cut as that. A lot of this stuff has been really complicated to work out, because I blow hot and cold. You've seen me. I'm apologising 1 minute, shouting the next, angry 1 minute, please come here, hold me. It's like I just feel like I've been really battling through this very weird thing. Also, with issues we have, you did this. Oh wait, no, I see you didn't. It's okay, don't worry about it, forget about it. But it doesn't matter. I opened up a wound, and it scars, and the scar is always there. Just because I feel okay about it now doesn't mean that you did. And when I used to say stuff like, why can't we just move on? It's because I felt like I felt like I was comfortable, and I didn't make the effort to see if you were. And if you weren't, because I was, I don't understand why you couldn't be. No, I don't really know what that is. But I know that it's wrong, and I know that I knew of it, and to be honest, I thought that at a certain point, when I was sleeping on the sofa and stuff, I convinced myself that that's what you wanted. You obviously didn't, so I'm not saying you wanted it and I did it. As in, I convinced myself because I was making an excuse for myself, not as in, I was doing it for you. I don't mean if I say anything along those lines, that's not how I mean it. I wasn't doing it for you, I was doing it for me. It was easy to avoid you. I wasn't putting the effort in. Because you obviously had said, like you have on this, like, give me time to come back, talk properly, apologise, I need time to process stuff. And I wasn't doing it. And then I started doing it almost out of spite. Like, I started doing it being like, oh, yeah, well, I'm sleeping on the sofa now. Isn't this what you wanted? Isn't this what you wanted me to go away? Because I'm such a fuck up? It was like self-pitying, self-absorbed bullshit. And, yeah, it's just really like fucked up thing to do to you at the end of the relationship. So I know why you left, because at that point there was like no love. At least I wasn't showing it anyway. A kiss when you're playing League probably was more annoying than anything, because I was probably doing it to avoid our problems. I got too reliant on you putting me in my place, and then you forgiving me. Like it just became a cycle. I allowed you to be the fixer-upper of our relationship, and it wasn't right, And then I made everything worse. There's so much more I could go into detail about, talk about. I don't know. Really, like there's a lot. It's sometimes like hard to keep on track, and but I feel like. Right, like, that's something I wanted to say on top of everything. I just want to make it really clear that, like, it's like it was me. And anything that I said before in any argument, I have looked back at all of them. I went back and read them. I read old iMessages from us from the beginning of the last year. I could see how I caused everything. Jealous about you playing games with your friends because I wanted you to dedicate your life to me. Not in a fucking weird way. I just, like, I wanted to run off into the sunset with you. I was madly in love. But probably, I had, oh, fuck, my toe. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, fucking hell. I was madly in love, and I wanted to just fucking keep you out as my own. I didn't want anybody else to have your time or anything. And yeah, it's fucked up because like now I understand it. Like when I started playing games with my mates, I didn't have at the time. I was just working. Like I was jealous of what you had, and I wanted to be involved because my friends had stopped playing games ages ago. Like it didn't really talk. Like everybody moved away. Like at the time we met, the only thing I had going was making YouTube videos and you. And that's why for the first like 3-4 months, like I was just like constantly obsessed. And then I did try to make it more healthy. That's why I started playing games with my friends. But even then, like I started to do that at the point where I should have been giving you more attention. Like I was doing everything in the wrong order, and for the wrong reasons. And I'm deeply sorry for that, and I just wanted to make that clear that I can see every single direction where I went wrong. And obviously there's more stuff that upset you, and my behaviour recently, like after that, that's just a horrible misplace of my own ego. Like I have wanted you to run back to me, and I wanted you to, be forgiving. I wanted you to just go, yeah, that's good enough, Alex, you've tried, or we'll work on it. And you did do that. It's the worst part, is you did do that. And at the time, I wanted so much more. I was like so desperate for you to just like fucking come back home. But anything else that wasn't that just made me so frustrated because I felt like it was slipping away. But not just that, I felt like I even said to you like I'm worried that I haven't got to a place. I was still being vicious and lashing out at you and being angry. But I was like using it as like an excuse to fucking do it. Being like, look, I might do it. It was blackmail. Like I was like, you should call me because if you don't call me, you'll lose the apology. I'm gonna be all angry. And it's because I couldn't control my emotions at all. I wasn't trying to. I wanted to. I felt like anytime you pulled away, I wanted to just burn everything down. That was just where my brain went to. Just fuck everything. Yeah, obviously, I'm not at that place anymore. But I was for like 4 fucking months, so that's way too long. Obviously, there were points where I was doing better, but I wanted you to move at my pace. And obviously, I was sprinting because I did know the damage I'd done. So I was trying to push you too fast and further than you wanted. by showering you in gifts and sending you messages and trying to call you and being like, let's meet up and all of that. I should have done it all in the first week. I'm really deeply sorry that it took me this long to really reflect properly on everything. I was still victimizing myself, and it was wrong of me, and I should not have made that even more of an issue for you. Just really, I really wasn't responsible. I was being responsible, I mean. Because I was responsible, but I wasn't being responsible for your feelings. And, you know, I can't believe that I was, you know, how I was thinking. I'm sorry that this is super long on top of everything I've already sent you. I'll cut it here and wait for you to respond, and then, you know, maybe I'll send more or whatever. I just want you to know that it's not your fault. It wasn't your responsibility to fix me. It wasn't your responsibility. Like, I only came to this conclusion because I had to do it myself. So I had to go through this to get to this point, to figure this out. You didn't have to. You didn't have to be a part of this. You didn't have to have this happen. I should have done this in my own time, or my own accord. But I chose to bury my issues before fixing them. But it's not you. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Like, you're not responsible for this. You're not responsible for what happened. You tried your best. It's nothing to do with you. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's not because you're lesser or because you have issues. It's not because of that. Like, you were fine. It's not because you... It's not because of you. It's nothing to do with you. You were so open with me about so many things. I knew how you felt about all the stuff that I used to make excuses as to why I was feeling that way. Sorry. Like, I knew how you felt about everything. We spoke about everything. We covered everything. We buried everything. We'd have conversations about everything. It took me to meet your friends to stop being a fucking bitch about them. That's not acceptable. You shouldn't have been a bitch about them in the first place. They were lovely people. I trusted them. Obviously, the recent stuff was kind of sucks. That wasn't your fault. And, you know, you did actually tell me, and you were upfront and honest about it, which is more than I can say for how I've been. And instead, I used that to call you a liar. So I understand why you, you know, I understand it's my fault why we have a lot of all of the issues. Sorry, not a lot. I'm not trying to let myself get off the hook. All of them. And with work and stuff, I know that you're just trying to enjoy it. And I was making it unenjoyable for you because I wasn't having fun. So I believe that everybody else should have fun and that you shouldn't have fun. And that I convinced myself that life is miserable and life is fucking putting up with stuff. And, you know, I just remember moments with you where I was my happiest and, you know, sat in your bedroom, just me and you, just lying there together. And, you know, it should have been that all the time. And when we got bare, or you got bare, sorry, still doing it, you know, just how happy I was for you, you know, thought it would help you heal. But I was right there just making stuff worse. I made them, you know, even your relationship with the cat, like, I was upsetting you. And because I was being selfish and being like, why doesn't she, you know, I was like, why doesn't she want to share the cat with me? And it's because of the way that I was acting. And I knew that, by the way, it's not meant to just figure that out. And I knew that back then. I was like, of course she'd take the cat away from me, I'm being a dick. Why would she want a cat near me? She doesn't want the cat to be attached to me because she probably wants to leave. And I felt that at the time, and instead of doing anything about it, I just fucking moped and sulked like a fucking child. I'm sorry for getting emotional. I'm just really angry at myself. Because you were the best. And I was there fucking, oh God. But you were, you know. And even all the way back to when you said that stuff about the bipolar disorder. And I was mean. I read that text the other day, and I'm so angry. Like, why was I like that to you? I know what I meant at the time, but I was making it about me. And you said that, you knew that. And I did apologise back then. But I didn't change any behaviour. Like, I saw you say that, and I thought, oh, that's an excuse for why she doesn't text me, that's an excuse for why she doesn't talk to me. Because I was down your throat. And in reality, you were just trying to say it's not my fault and I'm doing my best. But instead I thought you were using it because I was so convinced myself that like, you were out of my league and that I didn't deserve you. And also that I was going to fuck it up. Like, convinced myself that you were always looking for a way out. When in reality, you just wanted me to be normal. You didn't want my money. You didn't want anything from me apart from me to just be what I could be all the time. And I'm so sorry, Alice. I'm so sorry. I let you down. And, I don't deserve to be forgiven. I don't deserve anything. I should be held accountable for my mistakes. To you, it was wrong. And I'm sorry, but it's taken you to do everything in your power to really make me understand it. I really held on to the last minute to not do this. Like, I tried my best to avoid this. And I don't know why, because if I'd have done it, if I'd have actually just truly been like, I fucking suck, I just don't want to admit it because honestly, I had convinced myself that my ego was the only thing that was keeping me going. I convinced myself it was the only reason I was working, I convinced myself it was the only reason I could get anything done, and that if I didn't have my ego, then I wouldn't be able to work, and I'd give up on everything, and I'd quit, and then, you know, I'd give up on life, and I'd just be this fucking mopey loser, when in reality, I think if I'd just given up on everything, I would have been happy with you. But instead, I convinced myself that this fucking terrible behaviour was powering me like a fucking machine. And I told myself that without it, I would not be able to work and make myself do stuff, because I beat myself up all the time to work. I don't do it for fun. I wasn't doing anything out of enjoyment. I was doing it like, I've got to fucking do this. If I don't do this, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to fuck stuff up. You know, nobody's going to want to be around me. Nobody's going to be friends with me. But in the process, you know, I was just pushing you away. And like you said it the other day, that you'd rather have nothing and be happy than have everything and be miserable. And, you know, I would do anything in the world to have absolutely nothing right now apart from you. I would trade all of this, everything here, because it's worth nothing. It's not worth fucking anything. It's just built on being miserable. You were the only thing I had that I actually enjoyed. And I convinced myself that somehow that loads of it was fake and wrong, and I used it to hurt you. I'm gonna leave this here. I don't know what you'll have to say, and I understand, really, whatever happens. Like, I'm not gonna hold anything against you. Like, it's not your fault. I don't hold anything against you. I don't hold anything. I understand. Like, I do. And I'm sorry for crying. I just, when I start, I don't open up ever because I've kind of shut all of this stuff down for so long. Like, I hadn't cried in forever. The only time I ever cried is when I apologised to you, and that's when I realised how much I'd fucked stuff up. And, seeing you hurt is just the worst. I don't want that. I don't want to see you hurting. I don't want that less than anything in the world. And I'm sorry for putting you through so much.
The realization and acknowledgement of all of this would be healthy for Alex if it was self-reflection, done entirely for the sake of himself and something that he was discussing with maybe a therapist, but one issue with abusers seeking out therapy and therapeutic spaces is that they actually learn better manipulation tactics because they learn about their own behaviors and language associated with it. They can use this information to trick their victims into thinking that they're growing, changing, and even seem sincere in their apologies towards them, but in reality, they didn't, and they don't care. This is very commonly seen with people with narcissistic personality disorder when they're forced to seek out treatment for themselves, as they tend not to find any real fault of their own actions, but would rather the reactions of others towards them. This is where a lot of the bad apology talks also come from, with lines like, "I'm sorry if what I said hurt you," and things like that. I got some flack in the comments and another video, particularly with the James Somerton situation, because I made references and wondering if he had NPD or something similar to that, because people thought that I was armchair diagnosing him, and that's not what I was doing at all, and I'm also not trying to diagnose Alex with anything either. You are all right to think that not everyone needs some sort of mental health label, that sometimes assholes are just assholes, but I'm just nosy. I wouldn't be doing commentary type videos if I wasn't. And unfortunately, it kind of falls into the "you're too nice" thing that people also have been complaining about in certain comment sections. I just want to find reason when there doesn't seem to be any. Even if there doesn't seem to be any reason, like in the moment of a situation occurring, when you look back at it, you can see telltale patterns and signs that something was wrong. The next file is another video of Alex berating Alice in a Discord call, and this one is rather short, with him just comparing Alice to a dog, and is yet another instance of Alex appearing to be horrifically controlling towards her.
Thing about you, and this is the thing, this is why I fucking go round and round in circles. I join call, and when I'm getting, you're talking to me, going, this is the thing, even though now, when it's too fucking late, you admit you did everything fucking wrong, but when it actually matters, when you should lay down like a good fucking dog, you don't fucking do it, you fight for some reason. I don't know why you fight, because you're losing, because you end up admitting that you fucked it all up anyway, so it's just fucking weird, and I know that you're going to end up admitting that you fucked it all up, which is why
the last of the Discord-specific calls is the both of them bickering about something that we're lacking context for, but it ends with Alex throwing a bit of a tantrum and threatening to bash Alice's head in with a brick.
Sorry first.
So I'm a fucking whore-mouth bitch, retard cunt.
Is it generally because you're just fucking brain dead?
Yeah, I'm very brain dead, yeah.
Is that why you decided to go on the fucking offensive instead of the, maybe...
Offensive.
Okay. I don't know what to call what you did. It was weird. It's always weird. You always take the fucking weird route. Just do the normal route, which is... Just do the normal route, but a normal girlfriend.
You're acting like this is all just me, and that's something you really need to fucking fix.
I'm gonna fucking bash your fucking head against the wall with a brick if you don't shut the fuck up. Because this one, genuinely, this one, you fucked this. Royally fucked this.
You really need to fucking fix.
I'm gonna fucking...
The last file is a video with a mostly blacked out screen taken from what I believe to be a cell phone, with Alex ranting and raving about inconveniences he doesn't like about their living arrangements, and honestly, from listening to all of these files, I think Alex sincerely needs to get a hobby and touch some grass, because these are just such first world problems to be getting pissy about like a toddler. You have to buy an extra blankie? Boo-hoo.
Oh, what? I don't understand. It's not fucking be stuck up over. But for some reason, it's not good enough for you. You do whatever you fucking want all day. It's like, and then you look like a fucking miserable fucking little cunt all the time. But your face is annoying to look at when I come downstairs. Like, I'm actually fed up of looking at you, which is why I sleep downstairs. So I don't want to have to go upstairs. Oh, you take all the covers. It's like fucking woman just like fucking ask me to buy another one, or stop fucking complaining. Like, nothing, the thing that annoys me, nothing needs to be an argument. Everything is fixable. Buy a new duvet. I sleep downstairs. But no, you've always got to act like none of this stuff, because you're actually trying to fix any of your fucking problems. Like, it's infuriating at this point. Like earlier, you're miserable about it. All you have to do is tell what it is, and it's fine. You don't like, you're not yourself. Nigga, neither do you. So, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I don't go around fucking complaining about you and me up. Why? But you don't know about your fucking little brain. You won't want to pay for any of it. So, who really fucking cares what you have to say? And what does it even fucking matter? If you want to
doing right now, you just ignore all of that. I'm giving you options for everything, you just ignore everything. You're not actually trying to sort out any of these problems. And you've got problems with bins, man, why don't you fucking call them? Why does it have to be me? You can fucking call people, you can get sorted, you can take them out if you want to. But no, Alex doesn't actually fucking do anything. I'm trying to fucking right now, I'm spending pretty much fucking every single day trying to figure out where fucking 75,000 fucking pounds has gone. And whether I'm ever going to get it. And then any of my future YouTube revenue. Because the company's holding my channel fucking hostage. So yeah, sorry I forget about to fucking clean the sign sometimes. I've got bigger fish to fry. I still have to post.
Go away.
You still think about it?
Go away.
Such a fucking woman.
Go away. So are you. Ironically.
Huh?
So are you.
I tried to stop this like 7
I
times
think you
earlier.
stopped it. It was you.
I tried to stop
Go
it.
away.
I did try to
Go
stop
away.
it.
Go away. Just go away.
Infuriating.
Yes.
Like, if you had to do half the shit I had to do, you would understand why half the loads of stuff doesn't get done.
Go away. Just go away.
You upload one
Go away.
half-assed video every 3
Go
weeks.
away.
And it does
Go
terribly.
away. Go away. Go away.
But I slept up here because you fucking made, because you made me. I went to sleep downstairs so I could fucking actually wake up on time today.
I didn't make you.
Yes, you did.
No.
You're throwing fucking fits.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. Well, you can stop this right now.
Yeah, shut up. You're following me and going on. Fuck off. Please.
Basically, this last file opens with Alex whining that Alice isn't sunshine and rainbows every time she looks at him, citing that she's annoying to look at because she looks miserable. And yeah, beyond depression, which she cites that she has, I bet anybody would be miserable with a giant fucking man baby stomping around every time someone doesn't put a lollipop in his mouth and tell him he's such a good boy. This video is very hard to hear at parts because Alice is trying to hide the phone that she's recording on. So there's a lot of rustling and rumbling, and I presume that she put the phone in her pocket or something. Alex is heard going on about potentially hiring a maid or something because he has so much money. So I imagine this argument is about him not picking up after himself, which rumor has it that he was an absolute disgusting slob, but I cannot confirm nor deny that because I'm not going to look up his living situation. Which basically, if what I'm hearing is correct, I just kind of shake my head at the entitlement of that sentiment. I can't be asked to pick up after myself, and if you won't do it for me, I'll just hire a maid. If this was just a case of him struggling with daily tasks from mental health, that's one thing, but the maid comment specifically feels condescending because we know from previous screenshots within this document that Alex later tried to use him picking up after himself, including taking the trash out, God forbid, as a selling point to show Alice just how much he changed as a person since she had left him. During this spiel about Alice not solving his problems for him, we catch a snippet of something about a large sum of money being missing, which is alarming, but he uses this as his excuse and why he can't help around the house. Quote, I have bigger fish to fry. And checking out his Twitter account, I imagine it's like this sponsorship dealio, whatever it is that, you know, what he was talking about. He claims he was offering Alice a lot of solutions for whatever they were previously arguing about, and that he feels like he does all of the work. And since we're only seeing this from Alice's perspective, we are definitely not inclined to believe his sentiments, which at this point I wouldn't believe them even if we were seeing them from his point of view. The middle of this video is a lot of dead air as Alex storms off, only for the audio to cut back with Alex insisting that he was trying to stop something, and Alice is repeating for him to just go away, go away, go away. As Alex continues to rant, he goes on to basically belittle Alice's problems by alluding to his being more important, saying things like, if you had to deal with half the shit I do, you would understand. Again, the wrestling makes the entire conversation a little hard to make out, especially when Alice starts cutting in periodically for Alex just to go away again and again, but we can make out the gist of his griping is due to his YouTube videos not performing to the metrics that he wanted. Another aspect that makes everything a little hard to understand is just how nonsensical Alex sounds 90% of the time that he's talking, as I've come to find out. This video was apparently recorded after Alex had apparently kicked Alice and she was packing her belongings to leave, and it's just a bit unnerving how throughout this entire encounter, Alex is more focused on YouTube than his real-world actions, like apparently assaulting someone. I have to pause to wonder just how plugged in is Alex on a daily basis. We know that social media addiction is a very real thing, and probably a lot worse for people who make a ton of money off of being online. But how often does Alex go offline and just try to enjoy life away from a screen? Part of me wants to do some research between the correlation between abusive behaviors and addictive personality issues, because we also see abusive behaviors come out during major sports events as well. Not to say that these behaviors aren't present before, but they do seem to get worse when the object of their addiction is withheld from them. Alex complaining about having to clean up after himself and instead wanting to hire a maid so he didn't have to be away from YouTube work, it sounds a lot like he needs a screen time intervention, much like a toddler as I've previously compared him to. Honestly, watching these videos and listening to just how they interact with one another, I don't see how or why they started a relationship with each other in the first place. Maybe it's a biased take since I am only seeing the negative, since this is the kind of point of the document altogether, right? But it just seems like neither of them really enjoyed each other's company even from the very beginning, especially with Alex's behavior. I just have a hard time seeing what good he brought to the relationship in general beyond just money from YouTube, I guess. At this point, I'm glad that Alice got away from the situation before things escalated too badly, regardless of the opinions of some people on social media seem to have about Alice and her behavior and controversies she's gotten into herself. I don't think anyone deserves to be essentially harassed within their own home by an immature man-child who thinks people are beneath him if they don't have a high enough sub count. The trick about being a micro-celebrity online is that people outside your niche won't know who you are, and in my case, I'm in that niche and I didn't know who the fuck this person was. As soon as you turn off the computer, that over-reliance on follower count on social media to determine if someone is good enough for you to associate with is going to lead to a very miserable existence in the long run, because people in real life don't have follower counts. I hope that since Alex isn't commenting currently on the situation, that he's taken the time he needs to seek out professional help with his behavior, because it's not normal and not healthy, and I hope that while he is getting the help that he needs, that he's smart enough to just leave Alice out of all of it. And if any of this does go to court in a criminal trial, at the very least, I hope that Alex does suffer the consequences of his actions more than just losing his YouTube career. But knowing my luck, Alex is going to release a statement or something right as I'm finishing editing this video. It's just how it seems to work for me, apparently. I've already mentioned a couple of times throughout this video that I didn't know who Alex was prior to this situation, which tends to happen a lot with people that I end up covering. I don't stray too far from my usual batch of content creators that I watch. It's rare that I, seek out new people, right? I've been trying to fix that and discover more people because I constantly feel pretty left out of the loop with a lot of topics. But when I hear about a controversy like this, I do tend to dive into a rather shallow rabbit hole of looking at the surface level dustings of more information about a creator, and with ImAllexx having almost 2 million subscribers and making rather brash jokes in his commentary, it would come as no surprise that he had been in controversy before in the past. Mika's Rhetoric is a channel that I adore, and they made a very great comprehensive video detailing Alex's history of past controversies and his response to each of them. While I'm not saying that her video covers every single controversy he's ever been in, she does make it a point to cover the major ones that would be considered noteworthy for someone looking more into Alex. The beginning of her video is also a refreshing breath of levity to the situation, as she really does not like Alex and has both articulate and creative ways of describing how much she dislikes him.
He makes the most basic, bare bones, milquetoast ass content.
In Mika's video, she breaks down each of the situations that Alex had found himself in and subsequently survived career-wise. But each one seems to boil down to roughly the same issues on repeat. Alex is an opportunistic clout chaser who doesn't make authentic relationships with his peers and will drop someone if they don't follow his self-imposed guidelines of being safe enough or popular enough.
Back in 2017, the British teamed up with the Americans to accuse a Canadian commentary YouTuber known as Zaptai of being a pedo and a sociopath based on his behavior. In February of 2017, ImAllexx and the others talked about how Zaptai cheated on his wife by having an S-word with his fans, and that he had manipulated the 3 of them for views.
Alex claimed that it was 3 to 4 people, and then there was another short clip where he said like 8. But over 7 years later, only 1 girl has come up. Alex also claimed that the people that Ed was cheating with were 16 and 17 years old. But then one of them was the one that came out in the twit longer was actually lying about her age, and she was like 14. Alex says that Ed knew this the whole time, essentially, but that's been shown over and over again to not be the case.
Alex then made the claim that Zaptai was a diagnosed sociopath, and his evidence for the claim was Alex said he was Zaptai's best friend. 2 days later on Twitter, a person by the name of Sefer released a twit longer saying that Zaptai was having sexual conversations with her when she was 16 and he was 20 years old. Zaptai would apologize, and people seemed to accept his apology at the time. However, he deleted his channel shortly after that. So, probably that's not good. At the time, ImAllexx would come out and fully support Sefer's though, but it would all backfire for him because it turns out that Alex had twisted Zaptai's words to say that he was a sociopath when he made a joke to him about having antisocial personality disorder, which is like not the same thing. So
I'm not a sociopath, and where I've been. We'll rip off that band-aid off first. I'm not a sociopath, never have been. My exact wording was that I was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, which turned into Ed's a diagnosed sociopath. There was no diagnosis, and there was no therapist or doctor. As admitted, I was lying for months, saying anything I thought would make things better. No new images were exchanged at all, despite ImAllexx claiming that there was, saying that he admitted to it all in the twit longer, which is not true. ImAllexx is just recontextualizing and stretching some of the poor actions that Ed was admitting to in that piece, but there is nowhere that says any sort of like hyper explicit sexual content was exchanged. Essentially, like, ImAllexx saw that there was somebody who could potentially damage his persona because the two were associated together as kind of being a little bit at the time like Pyrocynical's proteges, but to completely spiral immediately, like within a couple of days of hearing everything, to make a video to condemn every aspect of him and just go on and on and on and on about how horrible he was, and then to also just villainize antisocial personality disorder for like an hour is obviously like a very stupid move.
in June of 2019, a YouTuber by the name of Slazo was canceled for many reasons. There was a large controversy surrounding the man's channel when at one point his ex-girlfriend came out with a twit longer saying that Slazo was sexually and emotionally abusive. ImAllexx, if you hadn't guessed by now, would come out in support of Che, the person who was alleging that Slazo was a POS. However, Slazo came out with evidence that supposedly showed Che is lying.
This all started on June 10th, 2019, where Che, or at FizzyPop, posted a twit longer about her relationship with Slazo that went on from 2016 to 2017, cited that she had come out because she heard that Michael, which is Slazo's real name, had been acting strangely towards some people. This was ImAllexx's claim, specifically. And when she tweeted Squizzy, or Hyojin, who was dating Pyrocynical at the time, Bluesdank, ImAllexx, Dolan Dark, and King Annie came out to condemn Michael and support their friend in talking about the allegations. For reference, just prior to this, Alex and Michael had actually lived together for a few weeks, and they had spent a week collabing and partying round with, I believe, other creators in Australia. She claimed that Michael was abusive to her, berating her, and making her feel awful. She also claimed that Michael was essentially trying to pressure her into sex, which Michael disproves in his video called My Side. As soon as everything came out, Alex began tweeting about how horrible of a person Michael was.
Slazo's response to it, I'm not really sure. I don't know the context of the whole situation. I haven't really dug deeply into the whole Slazo thing, but I don't really, just seeing this, like, I'm not really sure what exactly happened, but Alex deleted his tweets regardless, staunchly defending Che in the aftermath of all this, and a bunch of people made videos in the situation, in regard to the situation, and just shit on Alex for staunchly defending what he believed was someone who was assaulted or abused, basically.
After Slazo's video and the sort of generally positive response to it, a lot of commentary channels took back what they said and cited that they were just trying to support someone that was coming out against someone who was much more popular than they were. Alex, of course, doubled down and said that even the things that Slazo admitted were creepy and he wouldn't want to be friends with someone like that anymore. Alex later down the line sort of puts out like a text apology, kind of notes app on Twitter situation, where he never actually says at all that he's sorry. And Bluesdank said that it was a lot of, behind the scenes, a lot of this was instigated by Alex pushing to immediately get rid of Michael for the sake of, like, having no damage to, like, PR or his social status. Alex talked about it after, in retrospect, and continued to just separate himself from any major responsibility, kind of just being like, well, I was fooled, so why are people mad at me?
And then a lot of other people in the commentary community were like, yo, it's bullshit. He exonerated himself. So I'm not really sure. What I am sure of is that Alex received so much backlash that he eventually made a public apology on Twitter, which is awesome. He eventually rescinded his support for Shay and admitted that he made a mistake. However, in his apology, he never actually says the words, I'm sorry. And this made a lot of people upset. Seems like he just hates Slazo. Weak apology overall, though.
After this whole debacle, Alex essentially abandoned this friend group and dropped like everyone like flies, and then just moved on to the British commentary community. Now we're gonna go through the kind of most recent friend group that Alex with, and these are the kind of biggest creators that he was consistently publicly involved with. The players in this saga are iNabber, Willany, Memulus, and James Marriott. Everybody that Alex was once associated with hates him. After all these people were making these videos together, so Willany, Memulus, James Marriott, iNabber, and ImAllexx, Fraser, which is iNabber's name, suggested that they make a group channel with the 5 of them. Then a couple of months later, the channel eBoys was announced publicly, which consisted of Willany, ImAllexx, Memulus, and James Marriott. Notice that someone's missing? I think what it is, and something that a lot of people pointed out, was that iNabber was the only channel below 1 million subscribers at the time. So within seemingly 4 months, they stopped making videos on the channel, vamped up the podcast, created a Patreon to further the revenue of the podcast, backpedaled on the podcast release, and then disbanded. Rumor has it that Willany disbanded the group because Alex was getting increasingly controlling and would only ever talk to anyone about YouTube and numbers and revenue.
Mika highlights examples in which Alex refused to work with somebody, presumably due to their sub count, iNabber, and how Alex also would jump on any hate train bandwagons against former friends or collaborators since it would be trendy to do so, going as far as to lying about situations in order to better the odds of his content getting attention. This mindset was also present within the abusive relationship with Alice, as he would often belittle her due to her not being as popular as he was. Knowing he was rejecting the notion of working with other people due to not having the same level of popularity ties into the notion that his sense of respect towards others is also tied into the notion of fame. If someone is not famous enough for him, he doesn't think that they deserve his time. While probably not the leading cause to the abuse that he put Alice through, it's definitely probably a contributing factor. He didn't think that she was worth his time and respect because she isn't as famous as he was, and he thought that since he was more popular, that made him better than her, smarter than her, more entitled to things than she was. And this mindset just escalated until we got to the physical altercations that we know happened. Essentially thinking that you're not famous enough for me to treat you like a human being. I don't know Alex on any personal note, but his behavior is something that I often saw with former rich kids growing up. Those that had privileges and resources to pretty much do whatever they wanted during their youth, and it manifested itself into being a fucking snob. I don't know about his upbringing, and maybe it's just because I'm also American and he isn't, but you definitely don't see people in my neck of the woods telling someone that they aren't famous enough to associate with you. Part of the reason that many people immediately were able to pinpoint that Alice's initial videos and tweets alluding to a past abusive relationship was about Alex wasn't just because of his past controversies revolving around how he treated his peers and colleagues in the YouTube space, but because Alice was not the first individual that Alex had abused through the course of a relationship. The second individual to come out with allegations against Alex goes by King Annie on Twitter, and similarly to Alice, she made a Google document listing out the ways that Alex had abused her through the course of their relationship. Her document is not as long as Alice's, but it does include a link to an archive of video clips of Alex, with one titled Back to Nothing being the one highlighted for us to watch. Starting with the document itself, Annie states that she was dating Alex from June 2017 till March 2018, and while they both lived in different countries, they would often travel between Europe and America to spend time together. The hopping between countries was due to visa limitations, only allowing someone to stay for a visitor's visa for like 3 months before needing to leave. Annie details that they would work on videos together, but Alex would always steal the spotlight, and that he would often make her feel inferior and would constantly belittle her. When trying to discuss her own problems, Alex would center the conversation onto himself and his problems instead, and threaten to hurt himself over minor disagreements that they had together. As we have seen previously through this treatment of his peers in his relationship with Alice, Annie goes on to say that Alex is obsessed with his YouTube channel and thinks that being a content creator is just the hardest job on the planet. She also alludes to Alex catastrophizing in his mind to the point that anytime he would ever receive criticism, he would just snap. Annie also confirms that Alex lost friends due to him trying to insert himself into situations he had no business being a part of, and would make up narratives and twist details to make drama worse than it was. She highlights this with an example that Mika also covered in her video about Alex, that during the controversy revolving around a creator named Slazo being a bad boyfriend, Alex had twisted the story to make Slazo look like a sexual predator. Which I do know and acknowledge that at that point during the controversy that Annie was also pushing that same narrative. However, Annie cites that during this situation in particular that she decided to break it off with Alex after her friends had helped her realize how toxic the relationship was. In response to her breaking up with him, Alex would apparently flaunt a gift that she had given him in a now deleted video clip, which she included the archive link to the clip of Alex kissing the bracelet that Annie had gifted him. The final aspects of Annie's document also go into confirming that Alex exhibited the cycle of abuse towards her as well, and he had gotten physical with her at least one time during a recording session when Alex wasn't getting his way. She tried to leave the room and Alex was throwing a temper tantrum and he had forcibly grabbed her arm in order to stop her from leaving. She ends everything by saying that she feels fortunate for being able to escape the situation before it got any worse, and I think that this is probably due to the limitations on how often that they could spend time together due to the difference in not only the countries they resided in, but the sheer amount of travel it takes to go across the Atlantic Ocean in order to see one another. And of course the visa limitations only letting you stay in a particular place for 3 months at a time, and then there's like a break point at some point where like you have to wait like 6 months or something like that. Her final paragraph is a plea to others suffering from this kind of abuse to leave because there's no way of fixing these kinds of people. Watching the video clip provided within Annie's document is another case of Alex being weepy and sad like a kicked puppy because he's enduring the consequences of his own actions.
Hello everyone, I'm Alex, and welcome back to another video. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm trying to make this without doing any textbook YouTube stuff, but you're just gonna have to bear with the sighing and the offhanded looks around the camera, I guess. And I did not use a proper microphone, so, you know, ticking off everything on YouTube manipulation. But I wanted to just come on and speak for a bit and just kind of speak my mind, because if I disappear off, oh, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, and that's the issue. It's been rough coming back. I'm not feeling great. I mean, you guys can tell. And that's the worst part, is that even when I'm trying so hard, so, you know, I read the comments and it's just people could, you know, they could tell. You know, on a stream, people could tell, people message me, but I don't know what to say. So I just come back from England, and as you guys know, it's been a big thing on this channel. I'm back in England now, from America. I lived there for 6 months. And I really liked it. And it felt like I was really paving a way for myself, you know. And I was really... I felt like for the first time in my life I knew what I wanted, I knew what I was going to end up doing. And I was wrong. And I'm back here in this tiny fucking room. And everything's just gone back to the beginning again. I feel like I'm just reversed to a year ago. I'm just back at square one. Last time I felt this bad, I got a therapist, and I took a break from YouTube for a year, and I came back, and within the first week of coming back, I got introduced into making the videos I'm making now, and within the first month I went from nothing to somebody who had a job and something to look forward to doing, and something to, you know, carry them through. But ever since I moved out, it's just got worse and worse. But I don't want to be back here. But now I just don't know what to do with myself, you know. And that's the issue, you know, because people keep telling me to take a break, but you don't understand, like, this is all I've got left, and I try and push myself to be the best I can possibly be on camera, but my last video took 3 days to make because of the fact that I couldn't record it. And I just think, you know, I wanted to say something. I wanted to put it out there that I'm not doing too great, and that I might go in and out, and that I may not be at my best, and I may be struggling. And it's not just to make excuses, it's just that I feel like honesty is important on YouTube. Maybe I'm being too honest, you know, but... This sucks, man. I've recorded a video like this once every week for the last year, you know. And I've been complaining so consistently. I think the worst way is that about 2 months ago, I, for the first time in a year, I felt like I was truly happy. And I had it all working out, and I had it all sorted, and I come back in within the first week, everything has just been... It's like a train, just running through me, just like... You know, I feel punished for ever wanting to do more, ever thinking that I could, ever believing in myself, you know. And it's eating at me. I've got so much to do, and, you know, I want to be my best self so that other people could have a good day, you know. I always force putting my best, and want to put the best, and always want to put a happy version of myself, but I only ever want to show a happy version of myself. So I know there are people that feel like me who don't want to be watching people complain and moan and be like this, and that's not why people subscribe. You know, that's not why people watch this, that's not why people want to know me, and all I've been for the last year is just this shell. Because of all these things that are out of my control that happened to me, and it's just built and built and built, and now, you know, the tower's just come toppling down on top of me at the worst possible point. And the thing is, when I came back here, I tried to put on this happy thing. I was like, I'm going to see my friends, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be great when we play football again. It was such a lie, I just wanted to pretend that it was going to be okay, because that's what I've been doing, is just playing pretend, and hoping that I grow into that, but it's just not working. I appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate the kind words from everybody, and I appreciate the people who try to talk to me, and I do, and I'm sorry for throwing a lot of people away and just disregarding it. But, you know, it's going to be a rough few months, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I'm just going to keep on trying. I'm not making this video so I'm going to go anywhere. In fact, I'm probably just going to carry on uploading, because I need to stay busy, but I hope people understand. Because I don't really know where else to turn apart from here. You've fucking given me everything. As much as every fucking YouTuber says it, you know. But you can't give me everything. Thank you for listening.
Without context, this would be an odd but sad video of someone being depressed over their mental health, but since we have the context of the situation that happened between himself and Annie, this video has more of an air of manipulation to it. I can only imagine that by uploading something like this, it was a desperate attempt to guilt Annie over leaving him, thusly kissing the bracelet she had gotten him during the course of the relationship. I can't say if this manipulation worked in any degree. Maybe Annie did feel bad about what happened between them, but that didn't stop the fact that Annie had left him and did not take him back over this, which is probably part of why he ended up deleting the video from his channel, or I can just assume, right? There's also a slim possibility that he deleted the video because he knew that Annie could have made content about their toxic relationship, and maybe he didn't want to poke the proverbial bear. Lastly, there was a third accusation against Alex from another ex-girlfriend. The original tweet thread seems to have been deleted. For this section, I was initially relying on information gathered and presented by fellow YouTuber Evangelina Scoff. She reported that the third ex-girlfriend, named Jess, had accusations that were very similar to Alice and Annie.
And if that all wasn't bad enough, another person called Jess came out and tweeted, "This is my experience with Alex."
Jess started in her tweet that the first couple of months of their relationship with Alex was great, but eventually Alex started to become hostile towards her as well, going as far as telling a mutual friend of theirs that he was going to kick her head in and kill her because he locked himself out of his hotel room. The threats of violence between each girlfriend from an outside perspective might seem off-the-walls hyperbole to sound as dramatic as possible, but we have to keep in mind that during his relationship with Alice, she said that at one point he had knocked her over and then proceeded to cover her mouth so she couldn't scream. When you look into statistics for at what point does domestic violence turn deadly, a lot of reports will say that it starts when the abuser starts going for your face, as that is a common first step towards strangulation, one of the leading causes of death in an abusive relationship. Jess also said she originally made a post about her toxic relationship with Alex back in 2020, after their breakup, and included that within her new set of tweets. I imagine that the 2020 post did not name Alex as her abuser, or else there would have been a good chance that he could have been cancelled prior to those issues starting with Alice. Since the original tweets were deleted, I dug around a little more to find the 2020 call-out post, and Jess wrote in that post that Alex would sneak off to one of his ex-girlfriends, making excuses on why he wouldn't tell Jess about it, and that she had a horrible feeling about what they were doing without her around. She says that he broke up with her, informing her that their relationship was the worst time he ever had in his life, leaving her devastated, especially after watching him stay up all night on calls with beforehand mentioned ex. Despite being the one to break up with her, Alex still remained possessive of her, blowing up at her if she mentioned seeing a good-looking guy that wasn't him. They ended up getting back together for a time, but Alex just started the cycle of abuse anew by love-bombing her. He would talk to other girls behind her back, and whenever she would bring up things that were bothering her, he would say things like he was too busy and had other things to worry about, and he would get angry at her for trying to tell him her feelings. She also detailed how he would play the victim and reverse their roles in the situation, which is, for the record called Darva, like I mentioned earlier, a classic abuse tactic to try to gaslight the victim into thinking that they were the problem all along. Jess continues to detail out how she was the only one putting in effort in their relationship, with her doing things for him, being there for him when he was upset, and taking him out to fun activities, while he would dismiss her feelings and ignore her in favor of his work. He would also attempt to isolate her by telling her that he hated her friends and would ignore her in favor of his friends, even if it meant that she was put in uncomfortable or even unsafe situations. He would insult her by calling her fat, knowing her weight was an insecurity she suffered from. Alex broke up with Jess on Valentine's Day after she tried to tell him that she felt like he didn't like or appreciate her. And later he tried to twist the narrative to say that she had been the one to break up with him. Jess continues to detail how he would find time to go see his friends, even if he would constantly tell her that he didn't have time to see her because he was too busy with work. She questioned how his friends could spend time with their girlfriends, and Alex had responded that they weren't as passionate about work as him. Alex basically amounted to any time that he spent with Jess as a waste of time, since it was time he could have used for work instead. Sometime in April, during the big boom of the COVID deaths, Jess sought Alex out for comfort, but he refused to even answer his phone. Eventually, he would later block her number, something she says hurt her deeply when she knew that behind the scenes he was always complaining about his friends and how miserable they made him, but she was the only one he cut off. And with hindsight that he only associates with people that he deems popular enough to associate with him, people that he can leech off of basically, I imagine that he wasn't cutting off these people that he obviously disliked because he could still get something from them. Jess says that Alex would constantly use his mental health and would use it against her, but wouldn't give her any consideration towards her own mental health issues. She confessed that Alex made her feel worthless during the relationship and affected her ability to trust people moving forward. At the end of this thread, she says that her friends had seen the text and heard voice notes all the time that Alex was a piece of shit to her, which is probably why Alex himself didn't try to combat any of this information when it first came out in 2020, because Jess kept proof of the abuse that he put her through. With 3 incredibly similar and credible accusations against him at this point, depending on who you ask, and more light being shed on his past behaviors towards his YouTube peers and friends, it's probably in his best interest that he hasn't responded to any of these accusations as of yet. Since his stress over YouTube is a big factor in why he mistreats people the way he does, it's probably the healthiest for him right now to be offline and possibly seek out treatment for his blatant anger issues that he's suffering from. If this is how he responds to stress from a job that he chose to have, I can only imagine what kind of behavior he would exhibit from a job he was forced to have for the sake of just making ends meet. McDonald's probably wouldn't even hire him, or at the very least wouldn't keep him around for long with this kind of behavior under stress. Following all the accusations and Alex himself not speaking out for himself, his past collaborators all seem to have made statements for the most part, either for, the genuine horror and shock of it all, or for the sake of saving their own skins, which makes me think that a lot of them actually knew about what was happening between him and his past partners, especially since a lot of comments guessed that Alex was the abuser from Alice's original vague post. Most of the statements go on to say that they support Alice and that they had no idea that Alex was mistreating her to the severity that he was. With the amount of people who came forward to speak their minds on the situation, many people on YouTube have been referencing this entire situation as the downfall of the British commentary community.
Now, there are plenty of people online now, especially, that don't like Alex. It seems now that that's sort of the collective, there's no one really siding for him. All of his friends have distanced themselves from him. There's been so many British people messages that I've been seeing on Twitter and Instagram, and it's like, oh, well, that's good. I'm glad no one's defending him, because it's like, there's video of it.
Everybody that Alex was once associated with hates him.
These might be a little out of order because of how I'm getting these statements. There's just so many of them to go through, but I'm hoping I'm not missing any, and if I am, Reddit is also missing them, so feel free to leave any in the comments below. Or in the sake of if someone comes out with a statement after this video goes live, you can also comment that to refresh and update everybody. Firstly, I went through the 5-part story from iNabber, who begins by saying that the allegations were some of the most horrific things he's ever read and commends Alice for her bravery in surviving and speaking up on the abuse. He says that while he didn't want to make the situation about himself, he does try to give clarification on his end that he was in the dark on this, as so many other people have also claimed, stating that he wasn't even aware that Alice and Alex had broken up until April. Fraser goes on to say that due to it being so in the dark, he feels even worse about the things he had read in Alice's document, saying that he was angry over the situation, but again says that he doesn't want to make this about himself. Part 3, he apologizes for misspelling something, for some reason, and then goes on to wishing Alice well and encouraging others to also be kind to her during all of this. And in true Fraser fashion of being completely long-winded for no reason, really, he continues in part 4 and part 5, which I find very frustrating on a personal note, because, dude, you did not need to post past part 1, but that's just my opinion. The additional 2 parts go into how he wants to talk about this situation more, but doesn't know what to write, and he says that while he knows that he's being unprofessional during this statement, he doesn't think this situation warrants a scripted PR type of response. He reiterates once again in part 5 that he doesn't want to take away from Alice and her story, says not to send her a bunch of questions in regards to this because she needs her own peace of mind, etc. Again, I know Fraser, I mentioned before, is long-winded to a fault, but just watching the occasional video by him and keeping in mind that I'm not the only one that's a little displeased with these posts. editing fin here. When it comes to the statements that a lot of people were making in regards to the Alex situation, as you have probably seen by now within the video, or it's coming up, a lot of these statements were made using Instagram stories. And if you don't know anything about Instagram because you don't use it or whatever, Instagram stories are similarly to Snapchat, in which they are only up for a limited amount of time before they are subsequently deleted and lost to the ether. I mean, there is a feature in which you can purposely highlight Instagram stories and it'll stay up on your like front page or whatever, your profile, but very rarely do people actually tend to use that, as far as I see from like the people that I follow. I'm not saying that these people haven't done that, but a lot of them probably didn't, right? Because I imagine the entire point of making the Instagram story was so the fact that, you know, it went away, right? So with iNabber specifically, so initially upon scripting, I thought that Fraser only uploaded like a 6-part story, which was significantly longer than pretty much everybody else had at the time. I think the most anybody else had posted was like 2 parts, but Fraser is very long-winded. And I guess at some point during the height of all like people demanding statements and everything from other people, and allegations that Alex's former friends knew more than what they were letting on, Fraser had actually uploaded this like 26-part story, maybe it's 24, I don't know, I think it's 26, but he had uploaded that and basically detailed out what he knew about the situation prior to Alice coming forward, but still, you know, it was pretty solid on the fact that he didn't know that the extent of the abuse was happening. Basically just thought that their relationship was kind of rocky because he and other friends had continued to notice that they kept like unfollowing each other and refollowing each other and blocking each other and things like that, and, you know, breaking up and getting back together, breaking up, getting back together, and that kind of stuff. He also goes into basically saying that him and, you know, an assortment of other people were all trying to be good friends to Alex when they noticed that at some point during, like, between December and March, Alex had apparently been very pissed off and upset whenever they were playing games together, and he just wouldn't really tell them what was going on, but they had an assumption that it had something to do with his relationship going sour. Fraser also includes screenshots showing that he and some other friends had actually tried to confront Alex in a like Discord server or whatever, asking him to clarify some things that Alice was posting because they had put 2 and 2 together. Like I said previously, that a lot of people tended to put 2 and 2 together. And I guess he did not give responses, or he tried to shape himself up to be the victim, as Fraser put it in one of these screenshots. Which, honestly, like, looking through all of these screenshots, right, I'll put them on the screen so you can, like, flip through them yourself, but from what I'm seeing here, at least, is that despite the fact that Fraser and many other people have constantly said that they had no idea what was going on, these screenshots actually, to me, personally, make it seem like they did have some inkling of what was happening, especially with the one screenshot. I'll pop it on the screen again, it's backtracking just a little bit, but the one screenshot in which Fraser is confronting Alex saying, hey, these, you know, blurred screenshots are terrible, you need to address these, and it's from, like, Alice's TikTok, and the TikTok caption literally says something along the lines of, like, it's not fun to be in an abusive relationship or something like that, right? And I kind of really see what Mia X Mon was saying now in her initial statement, saying that she had a hard time believing that people weren't aware of the situation that was happening, right? Because I know, like I said, Fraser here is trying to cover his own ass, but in the end of the day, like, it actually kind of looks like he might have been aware of some things a little more than what he's letting on. But again, allegedly, that's just my opinion. At the end of this long story thread, Fraser pretty much ends it by saying that he had an inkling that when he initially confronted Alex about Alice's vague post, that Alex was blatantly just lying to him, so he cut him off like pretty much immediately after confronting him about the situation, which I guess it's up to you whether or not you believe him in regards to that. But he also showed a little previously that after that situation in which he confronted Alex for Alice's like vague post, that he started like basically mass deleting everything that related to Alex on his YouTube channel, so there's that. Which I just want to insert here really quick that even if Fraser knew more than what he is or was letting on to at the time, I do agree with some sentiments that people have in which it wasn't Fraser's job to expose Alex for this, because Alice herself had not come forward publicly about everything. Remember, at the time of like him seeing these like leaked DMs that he is apparently trying to confront Alex about in these like Instagram stories, this was all vague posting, right? Alice had not officially named Alex yet in any of her accusations, which I know that some people might have problems with Fraser not like exposing Alex right away, or any of Alex's former collaborators not exposing him right away when they realized what was going on. But it's give or take on what your opinion is about it. Like, me personally, like, I understand both sides of that, like, conflicted feeling, right? At one point, you want this guy fucking destroyed, right? Because what a piece of shit. And at that point, like, if they're not going to come forward, like, the public needs to know about, like, what he's doing, right? However, there is still a sense of, like, dignity that you need to allot a victim of abuse for, like, what they went through, right? And it's there, you need to give them the opportunity basically to come forward with their own story. And it's kind of a very bad balancing act on what is morally correct versus like justice and retribution for, you know, this piece of shit, right? So I don't know. At the end of the day, Alice did come forward, and that's what matters, is that her story is out there, her side of things is out there, so things can't be twisted by someone having, like, a, you know, like us, commentary people, like a third party, like, thought and view of it, as opposed to, you know, her truth. Anyway, back to the script. Next is Jake Boz, who backs up iNabber's side of things by saying that he wasn't aware of the situation and was only aware that Alice and Alex had split 5 months after the fact. He asked for support to go to Alice, making his own statement that her situation was horrifying and she's incredibly brave for coming out with her story. Then we have a couple of statements made by someone named ImAllexx, who is a former roommate of Alex's. Their first statement simply acknowledges the accusation, stating that under different circumstances they would have waited until both sides had told their side of the story, but evidence was overwhelming on Alice's side, citing that no one should have to go through what Alex put her through, ending with wishing Alice well and saying she had a lot of courage for speaking out like she did. His second statement goes into explaining that he hadn't seen much of Alex since moving out, clarifying that he had long since moved out before Alice and Alex even started dating in 2023. He says he doesn't hang around them much at all, nor does he hang around much of the YouTube UK circles, but he does say that he was aware of the allegations since April, as someone had mentioned to him within a collab recording session about the situation, but cites that this unnamed creator didn't give more specifics other than the allegations were bad. ImAllexx says that all he was aware of prior to Alice's vague posting about the situation on TikTok was that the now former couple argued a lot. He says that he started getting more information about the allegations from another creator when they had gone out to dinner, as that person had mentioned text messages that Alice had published and deleted from TikTok. Clarifying once again that while he was aware that something had happened, he did not know the specifics until Alice herself made everything public. He finishes by encouraging everyone to support Alice. Now, since these statements are kind of posted all over the place in terms of timeline here, I want to take a moment to jump one person ahead of the bunch in the queue, who goes by the handle of Mia X Mon, and they had made the statement that essentially said that they knew about the situation since May of last year, and she had a hard time believing that all of these other former collaborators had no idea about Alex's behavior. She insinuates that Alex's abusive tendency was actually an open secret among their industry, that their peers would discuss his behavior behind his back, and she had actually gotten a talent agency to drop Alex after informing them of his actions, which makes me wonder if the verbal and physical abuse towards Alice actually escalated after the talent agency dropped him, as we've seen a lot of this work-related stressors was one of the triggers for his violent outburst. And for the record, before some whack job tries to comment it on the video, no, I'm not blaming Mia for anything that happened to Alice. Alex is the only one to blame for his own actions. If he wasn't a piece of shit, he wouldn't have been dropped from the talent agency. The reason I bumped Mia's statement up is because some of the individuals who had made their own statements started out by claiming that they knew absolutely nothing of the situation whatsoever, only to later kind of backtrack in a variety of ways once Mia had dropped the bombshell that Alex's behavior was well discussed among their peers. Another person who came forward was another former roommate of Alex named George Clarkey, who goes on to say that he actually decided to move out and stop associating with Alex altogether because he heard about all of the things that Alex was saying about his friends and YouTube peers behind their backs. He says he actually had been in contact with Alice prior to her statements going public, but even with talking to her, he wasn't aware of how bad the situation of abuse had actually gotten behind closed doors. He ends his statement rather neatly with stating that he just wants all of the focus of everything to remain on Alice and her story. This next name I've seen pronounced 2 different ways, so it's either Willany or Wilney, who collaborated what Mia said in her statement that there were rumors about Alex's behavior floating around within their circles, but goes on to say that he and others hadn't been in contact with Alex since the start of those rumors, and that they haven't been friends for even longer. He also echoes about how the actual extent of the abuse was worse than even the rumors were suggesting, and that Alex's actions were inexcusable. Another former collaborator called Italian Buck's statement, short and to the point, detailed about how they were rightfully disgusted with what was detailed within Alice's document, and that since he wasn't really friends with Alex, he was unaware that this was going on in his private life, but hopes that Alice is getting all the support that she needs. Another former collaborator, Arthur TV's statement, is a little denser, detailing that they had kept it private, but had stopped working with Alex a while ago due to hearing about the shit he was saying about the fellow YouTube creators behind their backs, and that he didn't want to associate with that behavior, essentially. With finding out about Alice and what she had gone through, Arthur TV states that they feel even more justified in no longer working with Alex, and ends the statement with encouraging their audience to send Alice support. Harry Irvine, another collaborator, posted a statement echoing much of the same sentiments as many of the others on this list, saying that the evidence is horrible, Alice needs the support through this, and that while they were aware of Alex's behavior towards his peers, they had no idea he was capable of this kind of cruelty detailed within Alice's document. They clarify that they weren't even really friends with Alex, only speaking with him occasionally to record videos, and while they had no idea about what was going on in Alex's private life, they are no longer going to associate with him. They end the statement saying that no one deserves to have been treated the way that Alice was treated. As you can see, this is a lot of different creators all coming out against Alex and in support of Alice, but some of you might not be too familiar with internet culture and might be asking yourself, why? Why do we care about the statements of these people in particular? Well, to explain that simply, it's because of a concept commonly known as guilt by association. Similarly to why you might be wary of being friends with someone who is friends with someone who hurt you in the past, it's hard to try to get along with people who willingly allow themselves to be exposed to and even friendly with people who have done bad things in the past, especially people who have never taken accountability for their actions. Gabby Hanna used to get into a lot of trouble a few years ago for this concept, remaining friends with people who were friends with Jesse Smiles' assaulter. You can also kind of see this playing out in real time with James Marriott right now, who apparently was also a former collaborator with Alex, who may or may not be friends with him. I don't know their personal lives. But if you take a glance at James Marriott's comments occasionally, either on his YouTube channel or over on Twitter, you can see occasionally people making assumptions about their relationship and saying that he needs to address this right away or else it's going to make him look even worse. While I'm sure that many of the individuals who did make statements are all sincere in their well wishes for Alice, it's also true that they more than likely are posting on behalf of themselves as well. Clearing their names of former associates with Alex protects their careers when it comes to massive creators like Alex, who cited in his own meltdowns that he couldn't associate with people because it posed a risk to his career. The same is true to everyone who ever associated with him as well. Former friends, collaborators, and even in lesser regards, his fan base is also caught up in the crosshairs. How can you still be a fan of someone like this? You must also be a piece of shit, right? Even if those fans are only watching YouTube on their TVs and don't read comments and the like, fans to this day who might still be blissfully ignorant of the entire situation unfolding. During the height of all of these statements coming out, condoning Alex and his actions, some people were jumping through hoops to try to discredit some of the victims, like pointing out that Alex and Alice had used slurs against one another during their arguments, or that King Annie apparently had misinformation about Slazo still up on her Twitter account. None of these things discredit the claims of either of them have made towards Alex, though, since there's no such thing as a perfect victim narrative. Everyone has done things in their life that could get them into trouble. It's not possible to be a perfect person. Some people have also been of the opinion that other people coming out against Alex are just trying to take the spotlight for themselves, like just because their statement was not as long or detailed as Alice's original claims, which I think is ridiculous. Since we were not there for any of these statements, we don't know the truest extent of any of the abuse that any of them had suffered. There's a difference between adding to your story to a relevant situation in order to bolster the claims of the whistleblower and inserting yourself into a situation you weren't a part of in order to garner sympathy and attention for yourselves. Amidst all of the infighting that sparked up centered around the allegations against Alex, the victim statements, and the statements from former friends and collaborators disavowing Alex for his actions, iNabber, also known as Fraser, got caught up in the crossfire as an ex-girlfriend of his came forward to make her own set of accusations against him, which basically boiled down to saying that abusers flock together. To catch everyone up, who is iNabber? iNabber, Fraser, is another commentary-style YouTuber hailing from Europe of some place, I think he lives in London right now, and was a collaborator and apparent friend of Alex for a while now. He currently sits about 1 million subscribers on YouTube and covers trending news topic stories relating to internet drama, scandals, and controversies, much like my channel does or many other commentary channels basically. His more recent videos tend to be several hours long as he attempts to break down situations more than just the bare bones of it all, doing more rabbit hole and iceberg kind of style research into a topic. And I'll be honest, I've watched a lot of iNabber's videos during my time of researching different videos because he tends to cover a very wide berth of topics I tend to be interested in. And being frank, nothing against him, I've mentioned this before, he does tend to ramble about weird shit a lot through his videos and seems to have trouble staying on topic for the most part. I can't say I'm much better in that regard, but I feel the need to point it out since I'm kind of bad about his content in general. If you would cut out, like, much of his rambling during his, like, 3 to 4 to 5 hour long videos, it'd probably be, like, an hour long tops. He didn't make a video about the situation revolving around Alex, but he did make a community tab post about the situation, summarizing that he was aware of the situation, wasn't ignoring it, and he hopes everyone will support Alice, all the sentiments he had in his initial Instagram statement. He also states that he will no longer be collaborating with Alex moving forward, which, good for him. He clarifies that he wants the situation to be about Alice and not himself, which is a nice sentiment to have. One of Fraser's ex-girlfriends, however, took issue with what she interpreted as him making Alice's situation about himself, saying that there was no way that he couldn't have been aware of what kind of person Alex was, saying that they would have conversations in which Fraser would label Alex as a narcissist and would talk about how awful of a person that he was. She says that Fraser was aware of Alex's behavior for a while, like in the situation in which Alex was spreading untrue allegations towards a mutual friend. The tweets in this thread continue as Kirst says that Fraser basically would just put up with Alex's toxicity because it benefited him to work with him, and she called him manipulative and stated that he wasn't that different compared to Alex behind closed doors, alluding to having suffered some sort of abuse as she needed therapy to work past. She claims that due to their relationship, she had been dealing with a lot of self-harm ideation and even made an attempt in 2023. She goes on to say that the stress of the relationship had led to chronic issues like hair loss, nausea, vomiting, insomnia, and migraines. But when she initially was talking about the hair loss, the insomnia, the vomiting, etc., she hadn't initially just said that. She said that there was physical implications regarding around, like, the outcome of their relationship, which she later had to clarify because a lot of people were asking about it, that Fraser was not physically abusive towards her, which the relevancy of her saying that there was physical, implications to the relationship becomes a little relevant later. This thread sparked what seems to be a very long, back-and-forth Google document war between Fraser and Kirst, with them both squabbling enough to take the much-needed focus off of Alice and her accusations. I'm honestly surprised that Alex didn't sneak his way back online when this was going on. Fraser's first document to debunk Kirst's claims starts off with more screenshots from Kirst's Twitter and clarifies that despite her claims against him, he did not know about Alex's abuse towards Alice or any other past partners that he had. He does confirm that during the course of his friendship with Alex, they had a lot of fallings out due to Alex's bad behavior, and that he was embarrassed that he didn't cut ties with him sooner due to their issues. This is unfortunately actually understandable even from a bystander, especially if Fraser really considered Alex a friend. The cycle of abuse extending into friendships, along with romantic relationships, is something that I don't really think is talked about nearly enough in my opinion. Fraser addresses the accusations that he only stayed friends with Alex because he was benefiting from him in some fashion, debunking this by saying that their friendship was actually harming his career due to Alex being so disliked within the commentary space, saying that Alex had actually been losing not only followers but also relevancy, presumably due to his role in past situations and being a well-known clout chaser. He also supplies a couple of screenshots to show that he had only collabed twice on his main YouTube channel with Alex, once in 2018 during the height of Alex's popularity, and again in 2019, but did not include Alex's name in the title of at least one of his videos. Additionally, Fraser points out that during the time in which he was dating Kirst between January 2022 and early 2023, he was never on Alex's YouTube channel and had only ever been on his channel after they had broken up later in 2023. After giving some backstory in regards to their living arrangements, Fraser goes into trying to tackle what he deems to be the more serious accusations that Kirst had lobbied against him, like saying that he wasn't that different from Alex behind closed doors and blaming him for her attempt on her life. He shows screenshots of text between them, stating that if he was at fault for her attempt, that there should have been some reference to that within their messaging history, or at the very least something to allude to her feeling that badly at the time that she claims she tried to end it all. Fraser also talks about a note that Kirst had written to him about their relationship after it ended, in which she said things about how she had regrets that they couldn't resolve their problems, and that she appreciated the relationship for what it was. Fraser's end of the text message to show that the note was real, shows that he was really stressed during their time together, and felt that he had to end it with her as opposed to the other way around. Inserting off script here, spoilers, later it's confirmed that Kirst was one that broke up with Fraser, right? With that knowledge that she was the one that broke up with him, and then later tried to persistently get back together with him, I now interpret this text exchange between Fraser and Kirst as him acknowledging that their breakup was actually for the best, and that's why he's not taking her back, even though that she was the one that broke up with him. You know, like, trying to, like, situate that at least. Because at the end of the day, I don't, like, think that him confirming that she broke up with him is contradicting on any of this document. I just think that the way that he phrased things was kind of weird, or I guess you could consider it contradicting in some fashion, but I don't know. Being completely honest, between, like, this whole, like, document war back and forth bullshit, a lot of this information is actually not presented very well. Which, hey, might be by design, who knows. There's a second screenshot of this conversation showing that what I can only interpret as Kirst asking Fraser to take her back, right? Saying things like that they should try to work on their communication problems and that can't is the cancer of happen. After that screenshot is a short text break where Fraser explains that he had a lot of traumatic things happen in his life back to back to back, which caused bouts of depression, and he wasn't in a great headspace to try to fix issues within his relationship with Kirst. He also alludes to troubles within his sex life as well, since his depression was affecting his libido. The next batch of screenshots is from June after they had broken up, where Kirst is pretty much repeatedly texting him a variety of pleas to get back together, insisting that they could talk things out and how much she missed him. Message literally reads, "I really can't let you go," and Fraser doing his best to be polite in his efforts to turn her down, which again is a little weird in hindsight, knowing that she had broken up with him, but maybe like she just really regrets breaking up with him over the situation that led to their breakup. The text break following all these screenshots is Fraser stating that the point of showing these messages was to clarify that despite Kirst going through some traumatic experiences, her alluding to him being the reason for her attempt to end her life was a lie. Or what he interprets to be a lie, I should say. He further adds more screenshots of conversations he had with her post-breakup that he describes as uncomfortable, the first one being about their sex life. She questions the reason if he didn't want to be physical with her anymore was due to her gaining weight, going as far as to say that this was the first relationship where she didn't have breakup sex, which, being frank, I think is a little weird. My foot is firmly planted on the A spectrum for this, but is breakup sex normal for allosexual people? Fraser shows another text message with the text break that he knew her birth control was messing with her hormones and that she was feeling better after she had gotten off the medication, buckling down that her depressive feelings were not his fault. He says that he made attempts for them to remain friends and to continue to hang out as if things were normal, but as we've seen from other screenshots, Kirst couldn't let the relationship go. From these screenshots in this document, we can see that Kirst would continue to pester Fraser to get back together with her, and further try to guilt him by insisting that they could work things out if they talked, and insinuated that he liked her better when she was underweight. Understandably, with these variety of messages, Fraser continues to say that he was confused by her thread on Twitter detailing that their relationship was so toxic, that Fraser was abusive, and how the stress that he caused her made her want to end herself. The next thing Fraser addresses within this tweet thread itself, in which Kirst said that part of the trauma she endured from the relationship left her with physical and mental implications, and that her language could insinuate that Fraser had assaulted her, especially since she had said that he wasn't that different from Alex, someone who had just been shown to have been physically abusive towards his partners. He shows that she later recanted this in a reply to her thread, clarifying that Fraser never physically harmed her and insisted that she misworded the sentence when she had meant to say that the physical implications were things related to her body and what it was doing in relation to her stress, like the hair loss and the vomiting. While he says he is grateful that she did clarify what she meant, he's still upset that people are now speculating that he was physically abusive towards Kirst because no one was seeing this reply to her original thread. Fraser goes on to talk about how they both suffered from mental stress since they continued to live together for 9 months after they had broken up, because Kirst had nowhere else to go and Fraser didn't want to make her homeless. I haven't mentioned it before, but he had previously within this document said that Kirst was also working for him at the time, which turns out to be from like podcast content and video content stuff. Fraser includes in this big break of text that he doesn't think that their relationship was abusive, even if it did end poorly, and he knows she will try to say that it took her time to realize that their relationship was abusive and toxic. He goes on to show a receipt for a blood glucose meter that he had bought because he thought he had diabetes due to him feeling ill from the stress that he had been enduring. He confesses that he actually has high blood pressure now and has been trying to reverse the effects it had on his body. He says he doesn't blame Kirst for all of the stress that he was under for the past 2 years that resulted in his condition, but some of the stress did come from her. In the ending months of their relationship, and sometime after their breakup, Fraser says that whenever he would have female friends over, Kirst would start arguments with him about them out of jealousy. He doesn't say jealousy, I'm saying that because that's what this is. And their constant arguments would lead him crying and his blood pressure getting worse. He brings her tweet thread back up, discussing how dangerous her initial claims against him were, since they would ruin his reputation due to the speculation around if he was enabling Alex's abusive behavior, and how that related to Fraser himself being abusive. According to this document, Fraser didn't want to force Kirst to leave their shared home, even if they were no longer in a relationship together, because he didn't want to put her out and she had nowhere else to go, but he ended up feeling forced into giving her a hard deadline on when she had to leave, because she was making him uncomfortable with incessant texts about loving him, wanting to get back together, and asking for sex. Fraser even includes that Kirst was making posts talking negatively about him even when they still lived together, and that was also contributing to his stress. He shows a screenshot about asking her when she would be able to move out and offer to help pay her rent until she can get her finances together on her own, pleading with her that he felt like he couldn't move on with his life until she had moved out. The text message shows Kirst refusing the offer to help pay her rent in exchange for leaving sooner, something Fraser says led to an argument between them as he continued to try to get her to decide on a deadline in which she can leave. As Fraser continues to explain his side of things, you can really hear the heartbreak in these accusations are causing him through the text. He continues to reiterate that he doesn't understand the accusations against him, since he was the one trying to get Kirst to leave and she had refused, that they had issues within the relationship but her accusations were lies, and the Twitter thread was posted irresponsibly. He further adds 2 updates to this thread later, showing that Kirst began to block people who criticized her thread, and that she had made another allegation on TikTok that Fraser would lock her in a room and told her that she wasn't allowed to make any noise. He explains that he had a rule not to slam doors while he was recording, since he didn't want his microphone to pick up that noise. Fraser again says that he is confused because he thought that this was a reasonable request not to slam doors, but wasn't forcibly locking her in a room. This accusation of not being allowed to make any noise continued with also saying that Fraser would yell at Kirst for flushing the toilet, which Fraser again explains was another matter of asking her not to make a bunch of noise while he was recording, saying that there was 2 different bathrooms in their apartment, and one of them was next to the room that he would record in. I imagine, based on context clues here, that she would use the bathroom that he asked her not to use, the one that was closer, and thus he can hear the toilet when it flushed. He ends this first document by saying that he was really upset that she was twisting their situation to seem far more sinister than it really was. Kirst replied to this document with one of her own, challenging Fraser's attempts at debunking her accusations against him. The original tweet for this document has since been deleted, but her document is still up. I don't know if she meant to leave the document available for people to see or not, but since I can see it, we're gonna go through it like everything else. I even saved it. She opens the document in a traditional way, saying that she didn't want to come out publicly about this information but feels like she has to because she has no choice but to do so now. That her relationship with Fraser had its good times but also had a lot of traumatic bad times as well. She clarifies that this document will have dates and photographs to prove her side of things, but forewarns that since she lived with Fraser, a lot of stuff happened face to face, so there's no screenshots for some of these situations that she'll detail. Which I imagine that she points that out in particular because of the fact that Fraser tried to use the lack of screenshot evidence as a way of debunking some of her claims in his first document. Kirst says that she is being accused of making this all up for attention, but says that after seeing Alice open up about her abuse at the hands of Alex, she felt brave enough to come forward about what happened between her and Fraser. She says that Fraser had a Jekyll and Hyde type of personality. Which, for the record, I don't really think that Fraser meant to say that she was making everything up for attention, but rather that he was upset that her interpretation of events was put out the way that it was, basically. Generally, I was seeing a lot of, like, you're making this up for attention kind of thing coming from, like, comments on Twitter. To start everything, she attempts to clarify what she had really meant when she said that there was physical implications during their relationship with Fraser. She says that the original tweet was worded poorly, as everyone had interpreted that to mean that Fraser was physically abusive towards her, while she just meant that the stress following their relationship had caused her issues, sleeping, and hair loss, among other things. She accuses Fraser of handpicking moments out of context to use against her when she was in an unstable place mentally, citing that she is not surprised that he tried to do this. Kirst claims to have formed a trauma bond with Fraser and is in therapy working on overcoming it, and says that the fact that Fraser is trying to use her codependency against her is appalling. She also confesses that the reason that she never came forward with this information prior is that there was a large dramatic power imbalance between them, as she doesn't have nearly as large of a following as he does. As the final bit of context before going into the meat of her new document, she clarifies the timeline of their relationship, stating that they had met on Boxing Day, which is like the day after Christmas for anybody not British. Fraser asked her out by January 17th of 2022 and asked her to move in by the 31st of that month. Due to life circumstances, she didn't officially move in until July. They moved into a new place together in March of 2023, broke up in April, and Kirst moved out altogether in December of that year. She further points out that they started having relationship issues March of 2022. The first chunk of this document goes into Fraser's dog Kenji and how the dog had attacked her and other people due to food and fear-based aggression issues. Kirst claims that Fraser knew about Kenji's history of biting people, particularly when it came to food, and not only hid this information from her, but also put her in position to trigger the dog to attack her by telling her to take the dog's food away. Which, during this entire segment dealing with the dog, I was questioning whether or not the dog was a rescue or had some sort of neurological issue, because as the chunk of text continues, detailing other times in which Kenji had chased Kirst down and attacked her, and had even bitten Fraser on different occasions, I can't help but wonder what the fuck were they doing to this dog, because honestly, with a well-rounded dog, this kind of behavior is not normal. I mean, I've had dogs my whole life, and my family members have all had dogs as well. Some breeds that are deemed very dangerous and aggressive, like Chow Chows, Pit Bulls, and Rottweilers, and never have I ever seen this kind of issue. Aggression in dogs, if not health-related, tends to be from owners not knowing how to handle the dog, poor socialization, poor training, etc. Which I get that Shiba Inus, which is what Kenji is, are a very particular niche type of dog to own, and they can have some issues regarding around more than one owner, but even to that extent, like, I don't think that this kind of aggression was out of the blue. The poor training bit seems to have played a major factor into like a lot of the issues revolving around the dog, as Kirst continues in her document saying that they had hired a specialist trainer for Kenji, but every time he would start to show improvement to his behavior, Fraser would act like everything was fixed and stop the training routine that was in place with the dog, which sparked aggressive episodes to come back. Kirst includes photographs of the injuries that the dog had caused. She details that every time that she had to go to the hospital after the dog attacked her, Fraser would be more upset about the notion that they might take the dog away from him rather than show concern for her and her injuries. She also stated that Fraser would make it her responsibility to call the vet and get advice for dealing with Kenji's aggression. When at an appointment, the vets had recommended getting rid of the dog either by shelter or euthanizing him, but Fraser refused and kept the dog despite the long history of attacking people. Kirst says that living in terror of this dog is what triggered her to finally break up with Fraser. To prove her point that Fraser did not take the dog's training seriously, he would send her photos of the dog in spaces of the house the trainer had recommended he not be allowed to go into. It would make jokes about the dog abusing and terrorizing her. She also claims he would love bomb her during these situations, which it's my interpretation that she means that he would do this as a method to get her to stop complaining about the dog. One of the things in her original tweet thread was that Kirst was complaining that Fraser was making the accusations against Alex all about himself, feeling bad for himself and the fact that he was friends with Alex rather than showing enough support towards Alice, and Kirst says that he did that a lot. As an example, she shows tweets of him about to have a panic attack in the hospital after he took Kirst after a dog bite. She ends the dog section by saying that living with Kenji had given her PTSD, and she's still afraid of dogs and has nightmares over the trauma to this day. The next section is addressing the accusations that Fraser had made against her about her trying to coerce him into having sex with her, starting off by saying that Fraser was actually the one who would constantly pressure her to have sex with him instead, even if she repeatedly told him no. She said that when they were on vacation, they had sex when she was on her period, and that she didn't like the mess that it made, so she refused to have sex with him again while she was on her period, but Fraser still persisted on asking, and she kept saying no. Kirst goes on to say that besides the issues with her period, Fraser also tried to pressure her into having sex in the hotel spa, since the COVID restrictions at the hotel at the time meant that the people had to book the spa separately, like privately. Despite them getting handsy with one another, apparently, she insisted that they go no further because there were cameras in the area, but she claims that Fraser continued to nag for sex even after their booked time limit was over for the spa area. She describes Fraser having a tantrum like a child, complete with stomping his feet and whining about ruining their fun. She said that they ended up having an argument in their hotel room about the encounter in the spa, which ended with Fraser leaving. In the next section, Kirst elaborates the claim that Fraser would lock her in a room and demand her to be silent while he was filming. She details that he was anxious about recording with other people around, and he would get angry at her for making any noise, or even staying in the house if he had asked her to leave. She details that on one occasion he had asked her to go get something, and she was taking a nap and didn't see the request, but Fraser came into her room and woke her up, demanding to know if she was going to do what he asked her to do. When she responded that she would later, he allegedly started slamming doors and blasting music through the house. She reports that this behavior scared her, so she left to do the before-mentioned errand, but when confronted about the situation, Fraser would gaslight her by saying he never did what she was accusing him of doing. Kirst goes on to say that when she had first moved in, she didn't mind the request of leaving the apartment when Fraser needed to record, but he would tell her with a little warning when he needed her to be out of the house so he could record, which frustrated her because she was having negative side effects to the birth control implant that she was on. She says that when she didn't want to leave the house, she would just stay in their bedroom with the doors closed, which was fine at first, but she details that eventually he would demand that she would be completely silent in the room, and what started as just an hour of silence turned into several hours as Fraser began to make longer and longer videos. She claims that there were times in which she would be sitting in that room in silence for 5 hours, and Fraser would scold her for even using the bathroom during that time, as he could hear the toilet flushing from his office. He even got into a fight with her over one time in which she was sick and coughing, saying that she was being inconsiderate while he was working. He would guilt her, apparently, by saying that if he couldn't record, he couldn't make a living. In addition to not being allowed to make noise when he was filming, Kirst further alleges that Fraser wouldn't even tell her when he was finished working, which sometimes led her to stay shut away in the room, unsure if it was okay to come out or make any noise. She says that she would go hours without eating or drinking, and would try to use the bathroom as silently as possible in fear of Fraser coming out and screaming at her. She confesses that this made her feel like a prisoner in her own home, and there were times where she got angry and purposely slammed doors, like the time that she had forgotten her medication in the kitchen and needed to go get it. She further says that this forced confinement made her very irritable and would lead her down a dark path, since it worsened her depression. When they had moved into a new place, they had kept the old place as a recording studio for Fraser, so Kirst wouldn't need to be completely silent at home all day, although she claims that Fraser didn't care about her mental health and how being trapped in a room all day made her mental health worse, so according to her allegations, he didn't keep the old place for recording so that it would make her feel better or anything like that. The next section of Kirst's document goes into her weight and the allegations that Fraser became less attracted to her when she started gaining weight. She begins this section by telling a story about how they had COVID and isolated together since they didn't want to get anybody else sick, especially elderly people within their families. This also coincides with them first getting together. During their initial conversations about the types of people they liked, Fraser apparently told Kirst that he wasn't attracted to fat people and told her that he would, quote, probably break up with her if she gained too much weight. She says she originally thought that this was a joke, considering Fraser himself was still overweight at the time, but she did gain weight and realized that there was a difference with how he treated her, questioning what she was eating and why. She claims that he even said, "Didn't you already eat today?" as if being human didn't mean that you needed to eat like 3 or more times a day. Kirst takes a moment to remind us that in Fraser's original document, he had said that his lack of sex drive had nothing to do with her weight, but was rather due to his depression, but she says that him pulling away from her had started months prior to the stressors that he mentioned within his document, and when she confronted him about the comments regarding her weight, specifically questioning if he didn't find her attractive because of her weight, he told her that she was right. She goes on to try to clarify that she was never trying to pressure him into having breakup sex with her, but she was, quote, spewing thoughts. She continues with saying that due to Fraser saying that she gained too much weight to be attractive, that she started massively restricting her food intake and feared that her weight would make her unattractive to anybody else that wanted her, including Fraser himself. She alludes to this situation causing an eating disorder, without calling it as such, but that's essentially what it is, and that she is still struggling with being underweight and has a massive fear of gaining weight. The next section of the document is labeled mental health and outlines issues with Kirst's depression, something she says she told Fraser about early in their relationship, and he was understanding and supportive of in the beginning. Kirst says that this changed when she moved in with him, and on days in which her mental health was particularly bad, when she was unable to do more than besides lay in bed, Fraser would berate her by calling her lazy and how her life was going nowhere, and that she was embarrassing and how he wanted to be with someone who was more ambitious than her. She claims that this behavior would continue throughout the relationship. She says that Fraser had given her an ultimatum in March of 2023 to either get help for her mental health or he would break up with her. Kirst says that during this time, they were constantly fighting and she was living in a constant state of fear from the time that she wasn't allowed to make any noise at home. Fraser constantly belittling her and the dog attacking her. She says at this point they hadn't been intimate in months and there was no longer any love left in the relationship. She also brings up that they had a mutual friend who would bully her, but Fraser would do nothing to stick up for her, and a different mutual friend had to be the one to tell the other person to stop. She insists that Fraser did not care that his best friend was harassing her, saying that there was times in which Fraser would join in on the bullying, and it was embarrassing for her. Kirst claims that prior to this ultimatum, she had tried multiple times to break up with Fraser on her own, but he kept begging her for forgiveness, and he would make changes to his behavior to be different, but those changes never happened, which led to her feeling stuck in the relationship. She says that all of these factors made her feel like ending herself, which is something that she brought up to Fraser when he gave her the ultimatum to either get help or they would break up. She says that during this time, she tried to force herself to be a happier person for him, but she couldn't after Kenji had attacked her again. She says the trauma and stress of everything had caused her to start losing her hair, and added photos of herself missing half of one of her eyebrows as proof, along with what appears to be a rash on her chest. Kirst claims that she had tried to break up with Fraser many times all throughout 2022, but he would go on and do the same song and dance of saying that he would change for the better if she stayed around, but he never did. She goes on to say that her life only started getting better after they had broken up, and after she had attempted to end her own life. She says that she felt overly reliant on him when they were together because she was from foster care and didn't have a good relationship with her family, so she didn't have anywhere else to go, and says that Fraser would use that against her when she tried to break up with him. Kirst then goes on to try to prove that Fraser knew about her mental health crisis, something that she is claiming he said he didn't know anything about. She shows some screenshots of text messages, the first showing a conversation of Kirst telling Fraser how she didn't care about his feelings anymore and how he treated her poorly during their relationship. Fraser is seen responding that she never told him these things until the last day of their relationship, and expressed confusion because he thought they were still friends despite the breakup. In her text break between screenshots, Kirst says that Fraser was attempting to gaslight her here because she had tried to help him with his ED, but he didn't try to help her with hers and instead made her feel worse about eating in general. She goes on to say that after they broke up, Fraser wouldn't leave her alone, and she had to tell him to stop texting her multiple times before he finally did. The supplied screenshot showed Kirst telling him that he was upsetting her since the texts were painful reminders of their relationship. I do find this second screenshot curious, though, with the phrasing of, "You message me every day like we're friends," meanwhile a previous screenshot had Fraser expressing the same confusion of him believing that they were friends. Kirst also brings up a time she was jerking off, and Fraser kept walking in on her, painting it in a way that made it seem like he was doing it on purpose since he would just usually leave her alone after talking to her. The next dedicated section is labeled Finances, starting off by saying that she had a sizable savings when she first met Fraser, only to have nothing by the time she left him. She alludes to him pressuring her to move in with him before she was ready to, or needed to move out of where she was before. Kirst also claims Fraser didn't want her to have a regular job because he wanted them to have the freedom to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and offered to support her financially during the relationship if it meant she would be happy. She claims this did not end up happening, and she ended up eating her way through her savings since she didn't have a job, and she never asked him for money since he would use money against her a lot. At some point, Fraser started letting her work for him on research and editing for content, and he would tell her that he liked the fact that she worked for him. She even says that Fraser wanted her to become a streamer and for them to collaborate on content together, but she didn't feel confident in her ability to make money doing that kind of work. He assures her that he could help her head start her success when she made content with him, bragging about his influence, essentially. For whatever reason than just nerves, Kirst says that she never did end up making her own content and said that she was stuck working for him. At some point, they had an argument about money in which Fraser called her stupid for not making her own content because he was sure she wouldn't need to work for followers since she could just collaborate with him, and essentially alludes to him letting her piggyback off of his success. As Kirst continues with this section, we start to see a pretty stark similarity to how Alex would belittle Alice and talk about his own friends behind their backs because he thought he could make someone successful just for the fact that he was, and that people were morons for not taking his advice. Now, there is a certain level of fact here that you are more likely to grow an audience and a career from collaborating with channels that are larger than you. The biggest battle of making content tends to be getting your content in front of the right people to start with, and so if you had someone with a large following promoting you, it can skyrocket you pretty fast into the limelight. This, however, does come with a lot of drawbacks, as sometimes people can be really unprepared to gain followers so quickly, and also sometimes those numbers are just artificially inflated and can lead to diminishing engagement returns. It's a double-edged sword in a way to entertain people who come from someone else's audience, while also handling rapid newfound success. Something that Kirst seems to have been unable to cope with, as one of the biggest factors she listed for not doing streaming as Fraser suggested was due to the lack of confidence. That being said, even if she would have been able to get a lot of help other newer content creators would never dream of getting, her career is her choice to make, and if streaming wasn't something she wanted to explore for any reason at all, it was her decision to make, and Fraser's job to simply accept that choice. Kirst's document continues with her remarking that she was grateful for the editing and research work, but did note that she found it tedious because she didn't find Fraser funny, and her depression made working from home difficult. This resulted in her being scolded for not meeting deadline expectations, something she agrees was warranted. She even offered to get a different job and let him hire someone else, but he refused since he said that he liked her editing style specifically. She notes here that since this was her first editing job, she thinks he just liked the fact that she was working for him. As a way to gain more financial independence from Fraser, Kirst says that she got a different job, but Fraser would end up complaining that he didn't get to see her as much, and it had started to put more strain on their relationship, noting specifically that her normal job limited when they can go on vacations together. Worried that this would cause him to break up with her, she ended up quitting her job only after 2 months, which resulted in her going back to work for him again. Kirst goes on to say that she was trying to become a better editor in order for other people to potentially hire her in the future, but she had ended up breaking up with Fraser for good and started looking to move out within the first week of their breakup, but didn't have anyone who could house her long term, and since she was financially reliant on Fraser, she didn't have any income to fall back on. They ended up coming to an agreement for her to stay until she got back on her feet. She says that it took her 3 months to even get an interview for her normal job, but was still editing on the side for Fraser. She says that he never understood how much money she needed in order to move out, and she lists a variety of fees that come with moving into a new place, snidely commenting that he forgot that she was a quote-unquote normal person. She claims that Fraser was making demands to pay her rent for her at her new place in order to get her to move out faster, but she refused because she didn't want to take the risk of him abruptly stopping his financial support of her, since she claims that he made similar promises in the past and failed to keep them. Kirst supplies screenshots explaining that since Fraser had money, he tended to be irresponsible with his bills, which resulted in a lack of trust. Kirst also discusses how Fraser was making it out to seem like she was the one at fault for having 2 houses or apartments or whatever you want to call it, when Fraser was renting one of them as a recording studio. She clarifies the claim that the new home was not so Kirst could have her own space, but rather because Fraser wanted to be like his friends and have a more luxurious home. She repeats that he would use money against her, and that when they had broken up, all his friends were telling him to kick her out, alluding to Fraser telling her she should be grateful he was letting her stay. She says that she had to remind him that he couldn't kick her out, since her name was on the lease, essentially, and that he wasn't letting her stay there because he was being nice, but rather because he legally couldn't kick her out. Kirst claims that she used this time as a safety net in order to try to save up money so she wouldn't be homeless once she really had to leave. She insists that she didn't want to live with Fraser, and that she was never using him, and she stayed after their breakup because she had no choice. She also adds in a screenshot explaining that she felt safer out wandering the streets at 3 a.m. than she did in the house with him. Kirst goes on to say that Fraser ended up having a breakdown in which he threw a tantrum and screamed at her for over an hour in the early morning. She claims he was beating his fist onto the table and was going off about wanting to make posts about her online and wished he could tell people how disgustingly evil she was. There are more screenshots, the first one being about them listing off whom they've slept with the point of the image apparently being that she would tell Fraser that he was yelling at her, only for him to tell her that he wasn't. She also clarifies that Fraser lied about claiming that he wanted her to move in early in the relationship because he wanted her to be out of a bad situation, and Kirst says that her situation was not as bad as Fraser made it out to seem, at least at the time in which he wanted her to move in. She then puts in a variety of screenshots to try to point out that Fraser was obsessed with her from the moment they met, and how he would constantly text her and say that she helped him calm his anxiety. She said that he was very sweet, but it made her feel overwhelmed. She said that he was intense and she needed space away from him, even in the beginning stages of the relationship. Something she shows that caused Fraser to send her a very lengthy message asking her to reassure that they were okay. Kirst then details other ways their early relationship was overwhelming, like Fraser taking her on expensive dates, a vacation trip only a few weeks into dating, telling her grand fantasies about what their life would be like together only for the relationship to end up feeling soulless, and for her to feel trapped both literally and figuratively. The document ends with Kirst reiterating that she was in a dark place mental health-wise and would convince herself that the good times with Fraser outweighed the bad aspects of the relationship, which is why she begged him to take her back. She details what looks like a cycle of abuse in which Fraser would do something nice every time they had an argument in order to get her into a better mood. Kirst says that during their relationship, he would make her feel worthless, which is why she was scared to let him go after their breakup, insisting that the text he shared in his document were missing a lot of context about how the relationship actually was. She admits she played a role in how toxic the relationship was, and that she would often pick fights with him over small things, and she says that she's working on that behavior so she would no longer be that type of angry person. She says that she's since started working to better her life and be a happier person, but she still struggles with trauma that was a result of her relationship with Fraser. The ending of the document has Kirst stating that she is appalled that she had to share any of this, but she felt like she had no choice. Now, unlike Alex, who has been radio silent since the initial abuse allegations dropped, Fraser has been very vocal in saying that Kirst has been telling horrific lies about him, and he's released an additional document after this one in order to defend himself yet again. He opens up by stating that she is purposely trying to ruin his life, and he will be responding to her individual claims in order to disprove all of the accusations. Fraser makes a call to action for this document in particular to be shared in order to rebuke anyone calling him an abuser due to Kirst's allegations. He clarifies that he will be addressing the claims in order of how serious the accusations are, or saying how serious he thinks the accusations are in particular, such as saying that the accusations of sexual coercion will be the first thing, and the things dealing with Kenji the dog will be last. He provides a link to the original document he made to disprove the claims that Kirst made in her, original Twitter thread, which for the sake of not going back and forth too much, I've already covered that document, so we won't be revisiting it unless necessary. The section about the accusations of sexual coercion opens up with Fraser stating that he believes Kirst is making this accusation towards him, since he was the one to show the screenshot of Kirst asking for breakup sex in order to prove to her that he still found her attractive. He goes on to restate that he found these messages uncomfortable, and now he finds the accusations of him trying to coerce her into sex unsettling due to one of the reasons for their breakup was due to him not having sex with her, which he also restates was due to the fact that he was suffering from depression, and later also reassures was not about her weight. Going more into Kirst's accusations specifically, Fraser shows the same screenshot that Kirst had included within her document about the time that he wanted to have sex in the spa, which he goes on to clarify that these screenshots were used out of context to accuse him of trying to pressure her into sex. He says that instead, the argument they had was because he simply wanted to stay in the sauna area longer than the hour that they had booked, but Kirst didn't want to stay. But the statement of "let's fuck in the spa" was a joke, since he was aware that there was cameras in the area. He reassures that they would often joke together about having sex in public areas, but they were silly fantasies that they never actually did any of them. Before we get to that point, however, Fraser shows a screenshot of them having sexual banter from 2022, demonstrating that either of them could post screenshots like this out of context in order to spin a narrative that wasn't true. He shows a section of Kirst's document in which she accuses him of using out-of-context screenshots in order to manipulate the narrative that Fraser was lying about her. Then he goes into showing an assortment of screenshots about arguments they were having a few days prior to their spa trip, one of them being about him apologizing for slamming a door and Kirst asking for space, and another screenshot in which Fraser is talking to a different friend about how his argument with Kirst was due to a miscommunication that she found amusing now that they had cleared everything up. He goes on to say that since Kirst had previously asked for space after arguments, Fraser proceeded to just give her that space even if she didn't explicitly ask for it, as a way to help her feel more comfortable with him after their fights. Going back to the initial topic of the sexual coercion accusation, Fraser goes on to say how disgusting it was for her to spin this narrative since their sex life, or lack of one, was again a big factor to why they had broken up to begin with, basically saying that he didn't know why she was trying to accuse him of trying to force her into having sex when he didn't want to have sex to begin with, showing another screenshot of the issue from later in the year about them, again, not having enough sex. Fraser goes into why he felt it was important to clarify the issues revolving around showing the screenshots out of context, saying that while he was shocked that Kirst would try to paint the narrative that he was trying to force her into sex, he did acknowledge that her previous tweets did seem to try to make him out to be a physical abuser, since they mentioned physical and mental implications from their previous relationship, and those tweets in particular were in relation to the allegations against Alex coming to light. Basically, despite her later trying to clarify that the physical implications were things like losing her hair, etc., Fraser insists that the original tweets were actually sent in order to make unaware bystanders believe that he assaulted Kirst during their relationship, which, honestly, a ton of people did in fact interpret that tweet that way, so his assumption is reasonable, especially given the fact that she did not make the clarification until the next day. The next section Fraser covers is about Kirst's allegation that he would force her to lock herself in a room and forbid her from making any noise, and would scream at her if she even flushed the toilet in their home. He starts by saying that this was something that he actually covered in his previous document, saying that while he did ask her to be quiet when he was recording or asked her to do things like walk the dog, he says that there was only one time he forgot to tell her that he was finished working. Fraser insists that this wasn't any way malicious on his side, but just an honest mistake. He goes on to continue explaining that they lived in a very small place, and tensions ran high due to not enough space for them to do their own stuff, basically. He also touches on the accusations of gaslighting that Kirst mentioned while talking about slamming doors, something he actually shows screenshot of before, in which he was having a conversation with a friend about the misunderstanding. After that, he goes back into explaining that he was only asking her to be quiet for maybe an hour once or twice a week so he could record, because he was the only one making any money at the time and needed to pay their bills. He mentions again that she came from a tough living situation and wanted her to stay with him for her own safety, but she was being manipulative by insisting that he was locking her up. He also addresses the screenshot she used in her document about him getting mad at her over video games, saying he didn't know why she included it with her allegations against him, as it was just a joke. The following section is about the accusations regarding Kirst's weight and him triggering her into having an eating disorder. Like many other aspects of this document, he says that this entire situation is a bizarre claim to make against him. He provides screenshots of Kirst calling him her personal chef and text messages showing him ordering and bringing her food, also showing that when he looked up the phrases she claimed he would say to her, no results would pop up. Fraser says that the accusations about him not liking fat people only started popping up after they had broken up. He says she posted lies about him on her TikTok regularly after their breakup. The next section is titled Mental Health and goes into the claims that their relationship started falling apart after she moved in, showing a screenshot from before Kirst moved in permanently where she explains to him that her mental state wasn't due to him, but rather because she felt like she needed her own space with her own belongings, and it felt like the place that Fraser was currently living in was only Fraser's. He says he tried to be accommodating and understanding of her needs, showing a continuation to that conversation where he says that he was rearranging the entire house in order to make it more homely for her and to give her what she wanted in terms of items of decor, saying that he was even looking into renting an office space in order to free up a room in the home for her to have for herself. He even offers to pay for her to go do activities so that she could meet new friends, ending with saying that he was trying his best to make things better for her and was doing everything he could to help her at the time. He shows more screenshots of him trying to be accommodating towards her and her mental health, acknowledging that he was aware she was dealing with a lot, but she acknowledged that it wasn't because of him. He says that there were days when they would have to cancel plans to hang out together due to her mental health, and he only tried to offer her help where he could. Fraser also says that they would often talk about Kirst going to therapy, with him offering to pay for it for her, but she would turn him down every time he brought it up. Taking a moment to clarify some things, Fraser shows a screenshot from Kirst's Twitter saying that she was grateful for him because without him she would have nothing. He says that realizing things aren't the way that you thought they were later is a thing, but he feels that he has a lot of evidence to show that Kirst is lying about him in order to manipulate the narrative that he was a horrible boyfriend. To prove this, he shows a couple of parts of Kirst's document against him, saying that they contradicted each other, with one saying that she was the one to try to break up with him, but felt trapped in the relationship, while another section claimed that Fraser was the one trying trying to break up with her. He says that the differences in the dates between the sections of her document only show that there were very good points and bad points of the relationship, as there are in any relationship really, and he provides another screenshot to show that Kirst had used the same mindset of there were good times too in order to try to convince him to take her back after they had broken up for good in 2023. He admits he did regularly suggest Kirst to go to therapy, but he never used that as an ultimatum against her if she refused to go. He says that she was the one to break up with him, but then tried to beg for him to take her back, which he says made him feel trapped instead. To prove this, he shows a collection of screenshots of her texting him and asking to talk things out, the same ones he showed in his first document. Fraser also touches again on the offer he made to her for him to pay her rent, something she said in her document she turned down because she couldn't trust him to pay the bills for her, but he states that he would legally have to as the guarantor, which I looked it up, it's basically a cosigner on the lease if you were an American. Basically, to sum it up, if the main person on the lease doesn't pay their bills for whatever reason, the landlord can go after the other person in order to get the money that they need, which would include suing that person if for whatever reason the landlord wasn't getting the money that they needed. Basically, to sum up, he says that by her refusing to leave under his offers of helping her find new housing, he ended up feeling trapped with her in the house after their breakup and her constantly trying to convince him to take her back. Next bit shows the screenshot in which Kirst references wanting to hurt herself, with Fraser saying the context of this argument was that Kirst was posting things about his friends on her social media after their breakup. He says he was aware of her posting negatively about him, but felt that her attacking his friends was going too far. He says he didn't think her phrasing was serious since they had often made throwaway comments like that to describe feeling bad. Basically like this old man meme. He supplies screenshots to show that they often did make this reference. Fraser goes on to state that her behavior during this situation isn't fair, that he knew that she was going through things, and that the things that happened with his dog were terrible, but her making all of these accusations against him were unfair, since she kept trying to get him to take her back. He also shows screenshots of the beginning of the argument he referenced earlier when he finally confronted Kirst about making TikToks about him and his friends to make him look like a terrible person. One of the accusations in the post about him and his friends was saying he was sleeping with one of them while she still lived with him, something he expresses frustration about because he didn't sleep with his friends, but also because she had previously told him that she would be fine if he moved on from her, while she was also denying ever making those posts about him. Fraser goes on to say that since they were having more arguments about him hanging out with his friends, he says his responses to Kirst would seem nasty out of context, but he was under a lot of pressure from her by her asking for breakup sex, telling him it's okay to move on, her trying to get back together with him, and then getting pissed off seeing him with someone she thought he was interested in. Honestly, even from a bystander point of view, this seems like a lot of back and forth flip-flopping. The next thing he addresses is her claim that he was constantly messaging her and just wouldn't leave her alone, but he says that the screenshots that she was showing were actually from conversations in which she was the one to initiate first, and then cropped to make it seem like she was asking him to leave her alone and him refusing. He admits he was talking to her, but it was because they still lived together and it would make living with each other easier if they were still talking to one another, saying that he thought remaining friends would be the best way to move forward with their situation. Another small point he addresses is Kirst's oddly timed claim that he kept walking in on her when she was jerking off, with him clarifying that it wasn't what she was making it out to be, but he had knocked on her door and asked to come in and grab something. Given her saying he walked in a couple of times, Fraser thinks this situation might have been related to dishes, if that's what the British refer to as things that need to be washed up, who knows, I'm American, or he was looking for the remote for their electric blinds. He supplies some screenshots to show that her taking the remote was a common occurrence. Fraser also uses this screenshot to show that even after their breakup, they were on friendly enough terms for her to offer her bed to one of his friends when they stayed over since she wouldn't be there for that night. He goes on to remark that he didn't think that she would do this if their situation was as bad as she was currently painting it out to be. He says that things seemed fine for a while, but he noticed her attitude shift when he started bringing a girl over to hang out with. The next section of the document is about their finances, specifically starting with the section discussing the claim that Kirst had $12,000 prior to moving in with him, but had nothing by the time they'd broken up. He says that he played no role in that, saying that Kirst spent her own money how she wanted to spend it, and he never made her pay rent, bills, or anything else while she lived with him. He says he was fine with this arrangement since she was getting her degree and he wanted her to be as comfortable as possible. While her spending habits were none of his business, he does mention that she would spend large amounts at a time, ranging from a new computer to various various clothes and other items. Fraser says to help her earn some money, he did offer her various jobs to help him with his podcast and other little things, stating he typically pays people around $20 to $22 an hour, plus bonuses, and he would often pay her in advance, even if she wasn't finished with any of the work yet. He even shows screenshots of his transaction history to show that he was paying her. He also addresses the claim that Kirst felt forced to quit her job because she felt that Fraser would break up with her if she didn't. He shows a screenshot of Kirst saying she missed having as much free time to spend with him and how she was upset for missing things due to work. He shows that he had offered to help her by suggesting streaming and making content, saying that he could get his viewers to help her get started, and she even says that he was sweet for thinking about it. The next bit is about the British tax thing, so I might sound a bit dumb here because I'm not British, but for what I'm gathering here is he basically is saying that he had issues paying his taxes or some kind of fee because he wasn't able to get his mail and didn't see the bill, but he thought that he had a direct deposit set up to pay it automatically, but it wasn't going through for whatever reason. He says that by the next day, after he's seen the overdue bill, he called and had it paid for. He acknowledges it was a dumb mistake, but says that she was using this out of context situation to insinuate that he wouldn't pay her bills when she moved out like he offered. He says that she tried to use this to manipulate the truth because the overdue bill was from November, but he had asked her to move out in August, 3 months prior. Fraser then addresses Kirst's claims about why they had moved to a bigger place, with her saying it could have been so he could brag to his friends about having a nice home. He says this is just not true, and that there were other factors that went into wanting a bigger home, one reason being for Kirst to have her own space, which he shows a snippet of a previous screenshot in which he expressed wanting her to have her own room so that she can do things. He also addresses the time Kirst said he had a mental breakdown, confirming that part was true, but she twisted the narrative. He cites that they had an uncomfortable discussion about them seeing different people for a few months, but he says he did not bang his fist on the table, nor did he call her evil, even saying that the conversation ended on a humorous note, showing a screenshot between him and Kirst making light of the situation. Additionally, Fraser shows an image of him confiding in a friend about the altercation, alleging that she was the one that was yelling at him and not the other way around. The next bit of the document covers the situation about Fraser wanting Kirst to move in with him in order to get her out of a toxic home life. In Kirst's document, she paints this in the light of Fraser rushing her to do so in order to control her better, essentially. With this section, Fraser highlights saying that his claims of wanting to help her were bullshit since the situation was not as dire at the time. Fraser rebukes this, saying that he has proof that her situation was very horrible. He first counters by clarifying that her staying with him during the summertime was vastly different from her fully moving into his place full-time. He then goes on to show more screenshots of them discussing moving in together, specifically because of her living environment. Fraser explains that while he did like the idea of them moving in together, he was more concerned about her overall safety. He also expresses how upset he is that this is another thing that he thought to be innocent that Kirst is making out to be an indicator that he was a horrible boyfriend. He shows another section from Kirst's document where she showed a detailed text that Fraser had sent dealing with his insecurity about their relationship, and he acknowledged that while this screenshot was intense as she put it, since he was worried about losing someone he loved, he also states that the relationship as a whole was intense because they fell in love quickly and the intensity went both ways between them. Regardless, he goes on to apologize for that behavior, saying that it looked like an exchange from teenagers and not grown adults, and that it was embarrassing. Finally, we get to the section addressing the issues with Fraser's dog Kenji and him attacking people. He gives some backstory for the dog, notably stating that the dog didn't have issues until he turned 2, when he suddenly started getting aggressive around his food. Fraser says that he was open about this on social media, and that when the aggression started, he hired a trainer for the dog. He acknowledges while he didn't know why the food aggression started, he does admit the section about the dog biting Kirst while she was preparing his food was correct, and something he had apologized for, and after the incident got more training for the dog. Then the dog attacked Kirst again, this time with Fraser saying that he was sleeping and couldn't hear her screaming for help. After this, he made posts on a rehoming group trying to find someone to adopt the dog because he felt that he could no longer handle the aggression. Fraser says that Kirst was the one that actually told him not to get rid of the dog, contradicting her statement from her document where she told Fraser to get rid of the dog and him refusing. He then shows a section of Kirst's document stating that Fraser would often ignore the orders from the dog trainer and would break established rules with the dog. Fraser counters this by saying that Kirst would also break the same rules and posted about doing so publicly on her Twitter account. Fraser then includes an assortment of screenshots of the two of them discussing the dog's training and how stressed they were over the situation, followed by a section where Fraser sent video proof to a friend about the progress the dog had made to overcome his food aggression, saying that Kenji had gotten to the point where he was even able to handle the food in front of him, take it away, and he would just sit and patiently wait for the food to be returned. Fraser claims that there were no more incidents with the dog until almost a year later in 2023, saying that while the dog still had issues, especially in the kitchen, he had made obvious progress from their starting point. He says that while he didn't want to take away from how horrible the 2023 attack was, he points out that Kirst would often make posts online about how much she adored the dog, which included more photos of her allowing the dog on the bed despite giving Fraser shit for doing the same thing in her document. He also sells the point by including photos of the dog staying at a dog sitter's house with other dogs so that they can go on a trip to New York, essentially showing the progress that the dog had made in his, aggression training. Then he gets into how the dog attacked Kirst in April 2023, with Fraser first defending himself by saying that the accusations of him slamming the door and upsetting the dog were untrue. Then he gets into how Kirst said in her document that he was on his phone the entire time that they were in the emergency room, with her needing to comfort him instead. Fraser shows screenshots of Kirst also tweeting out around the same time, responding to people about what had happened with the dog. Fraser says since he saw that she was making tweets about the situation is why he started to make his own. Fraser then touches on her accusation of making her deal with calling the vet on his behalf, something he says he thought would be better if she handled since the dog had attacked her, so she would be able to explain what had led up to that happening to the vet since he didn't witness it, and rather he just came to pull the dog off of her. He also includes the mention of the dog potentially being put down for his aggression, something Fraser admits he might not have been able to discuss with the vet in full without trying to defend the dog. The next section is an apology for a badly worded tweet that Kirst interprets as Fraser not caring that she was attacked, with Fraser trying to clarify that it was the concept of going home and seeing the dog happy was horrifying to him due to what the dog had just done. He admits he shouldn't have phrased the tweet the way that he did. The following screenshot is a post asking for someone to help rehome Kenji due to his aggression. Fraser says that he made the post in a group specific for rehoming dogs with aggression issues. He states that he was prepared to let the dog go, either by rehoming or for the vet to decide to put him down, since he was under the impression that there was nothing left to do as far as helping the issues went. Instead of just having the one option, however, the vet gave them a secondary option to take Kenji to a top-of-the-line specialist who would work on his aggression, as well as the contact information for someone who could take the dog if Fraser still felt the need to rehome him. Due to this offer, Fraser refused to put the dog down and instead opted to take him to the specialist the vet recommended. He also moved Kenji from the house that they shared with Kirst to instead live in his office space, since it was technically somewhere the dog had lived before, since it was just their old home. He also states that he was still planning to rehome the dog after he had gone through his training with the specialist. Despite moving the dog and getting him the help that he needed, Fraser says Kirst was pissed off that they weren't just putting the dog down. He shows a screenshot of him arguing with Kirst over his decision to let the dog live in the office space while he was getting his training, stating a couple of times that it was just until he was able to rehome the dog. He goes on to elaborate that he was given between 10 to 30 minutes to decide what to do with the dog while sitting outside of the vet's office, to either kill the dog or rehome him. Fraser says from this, they broke up the same day. From here, Fraser goes on to show that Kenji did end up going to a specialist that he needed, as well as other experts, and the dog has improved vastly under their care and training. He says that while he did try to find somewhere to rehome the dog, he couldn't find a suitable place, and so the dog stayed in his office for a majority of the time, but he did end up bringing the dog back to his house occasionally, and he would just stay in the room that he was in. Fraser also shows screenshots of Kirst posting about the dog on her bed and loving him to show that she seems fine with the dog around her after he started getting his specialist training. The ending of the section about the dog goes into defending his decision not to put the dog down, saying that he is significantly better behaved now, and despite everything that happened with the dog and Kirst, he's still grateful for her talking him out of initially rehoming the dog in 2022. In an epilogue of sorts for this document, Fraser goes in to reiterate that he is disgusted by the accusations Kirst made against him, and how he hates that he even has to put out this much personal information in order to dispel the rumors that she caused. He also makes a note to go and support Alice because a lot of the attention was taken away from her story due to the back and forth between Kirst and himself. The document closes out with Fraser saying that he would be willing to delete all of these documents if Kirst also did the same on her end, but he fears that she would try to formulate a new thread of tweets or another document to continue trying to defame him. He reiterates a point that he made earlier in this document, that any situation can be manipulated to be interpreted in many different ways depending on how the context is presented, but he doesn't want this to become like an never-ending loop from them going at each other forever. Which, unfortunately, if you looked at the chapters for this video, you know that, unfortunately, the loop did indeed continue, because Kirst did respond with another set of long tweets attempting to shift the court of public opinion back in her favor. As far as I'm aware, these have since been deleted, but the internet is forever, so I grabbed them once again from Reddit. Luckily for my own sanity, much of these tweets are just kind of reiterating things that she previously put in her documents. She first tries to clarify the text that she sent Fraser about breakup sex by saying it was only a question because she was insecure and not actually asking him for sex, which I guess that's one way to interpret that text, really. Then she claims Fraser cropped some screenshots together to make her seem worse than she was. She also says that she was open about being a sub and that he was using her kinks against her, which weird, because again, that's not at all how I interpreted any of these screenshots, but okay. She confirms that Fraser never physically hurt her, but she says that he tried to pressure her into sex, but still says that she wasn't saying it was an assault. Then she tries to debunk him, saying that he never locked her away for hours and demanded that she stay silent, and that he indeed left her there without telling her that it was okay to make noise again, because him admitting to forgetting once confirmed her story according to her. Kirst also says that her claim of him using money against her was also confirmed in his document because, according to her, he was doing it again within his own document. Although I don't recall him saying that he was struggling to pay bills, he just said that he couldn't get in his mailbox for one bill in particular, but resolved it pretty immediately according to his document. She also goes into how he was nice in the beginning, especially about the noise level in their home while he was recording, but he would get more aggressive as time went on. She says that if she wasn't traumatized by being locked up all day, she wouldn't be discussing it in therapy. Kirst also says that the text about them having a miscommunication and laughing about it was manipulation because it was a screenshot sent to a friend and not a conversation between them, essentially. She also says that Fraser was using her past against her, and he did it again in this document by trying to debunk her claims. She says that, of course, she would be grateful to be out of a dangerous situation, but Fraser was begging her to leave prior to the incident that required her to leave. She claims he love-bombed her when she was vulnerable, and she got attached to him due to that and ended up being stuck in a toxic and abusive relationship. Which I want to be off script here for just a quick second. That by a bystander's point of view, when viewing someone's living situation, it can be pretty obvious when the situation that they're living in can turn dangerous rather quickly. So, assuming under the benefit of the doubt that Fraser saw the escalating dangers in her living situation and authentically really just wanted her to get out of that living situation, I think Kirst mentally is kind of downplaying the danger that she was presently in at the time. You don't have to be in clear and present danger right in the very second that danger is happening in order to be able to get out of that dangerous situation, so to speak. Which is probably something I actually should have brought up in like Fraser's section of like his document discussing her moving in, but I'm just going to squeeze it in here for right now. Going into the topic of her weight, Kirst claims that Fraser was using screenshots of conversations that took place prior to her gaining weight, and he actually changed once she did gain weight. I'm assuming she's meaning he stopped offering to get her food and started making the comments that she was alleging to before. She also reiterates that he would often make her depression about himself and repeat he would call her lazy and an embarrassment to be with. Kirst claims Fraser uses his depression as an excuse for his behavior, but he wouldn't allot her the same grace, repeating that he gave her an ultimatum to get help or they would break up. She claims he would make her feel like she had nothing without him during every argument that they had, and it impacted how she felt about her life. She said that due to how he treated her, she would end up feeling like the problem in the relationship, and repeats that she is getting therapy for the trauma bond she formed with Fraser, and that the screenshots of her being scared of him leaving her were just showcasing the codependency issue that she had. Kirst also goes into saying that her making distasteful jokes about self-harm didn't negate the fact that Fraser knew she did suffer from real ideations of actually hurting herself, since she had told him when they argued. She alleges that he would tell her that he was all she had because of her former living situations, and that her remaining family didn't love her. She claims he would try to control her life and belittle her because he was paying their rent. She also goes into talking about the dog, alleging that she had learned to coexist with the dog because Fraser would leave the dog with her for the whole day when he was working or out with friends, and she would have to take care of Kenji even if the dog scared her now. She says Fraser only used screenshots of her with the dog to make it look like she was okay with him, and claims she will post screenshots later of all the times post-attack that Fraser was neglecting Kenji. She says that he continued to walk in on her jerking off even after she told him it was creepy, and that offering her bed to a friend proved nothing besides her wanting someone to be comfortable, and she was thankful for Fraser for paying her in advance, but there was also times when he never paid her at all. She claims that some of the transfers Fraser showed in his document were actually from their trip to New York together because he couldn't use his card or Apple Pay while there. She reiterates the claim that Fraser made her quit her job and forced her to become reliant on him, restating that she felt like he would break up with her if she didn't. She also brings up that he bragged that he could make her famous, but claimed that didn't start till after she didn't start streaming. After their breakup, when they were still living together, Kirst claims Fraser would threaten to throw all of her belongings into the lobby while she was out of the house when they argued. She restates that the massive fine Fraser got for not paying the council tax was still proof enough for her that she couldn't trust his offer to pay her bills if she were to move out, because she says that there would be a risk of him changing his mind on the offer. Kirst claims that Fraser told her in person he was fucking a lot of his friends and that she didn't want to be around them because she would overhear him talking shit about her with them whenever they hung out together. She also goes into that they would shout at each other during arguments, admitting herself that she was also toxic. She goes back into discussing the dog, saying that during their stint of trying to crate train the dog, Fraser would mock her fear of the dog. She claims the reason there were pictures of the dog on beds when he wasn't supposed to be were because Fraser wanted the dog to have more room to roam around. She admits to also tweeting about the dog attack and how Fraser was essentially just being selfish by making her call the vet to tell them about what happened. Kirst also gets into saying she was angry at Fraser because she was trying to support him through the concept of putting down the dog, but he wouldn't support her about the attack. She goes into how letting go of the dog kept getting pushed off and she was forced to stay around the dog, and it gave her panic attacks and nightmares of reliving the attack, and she considered it torture to have to stay around the dog. She ends the threads by saying that she was angry that Fraser was trying to manipulate things to remain blameless of all the things he did to her, and that since she got all of this out of her system, she's just going to go on healing in private and live a better life. Although that does kind of contradict her claim of posting screenshots at a later time of Fraser neglecting Kenji, but okay. But for now, there appears not to be another sneak attack document to break down as of yet. Which, I know, that was a whole lot to go through, and I know I inputted like opinions here and there, but I was trying my very best not to do that, just so that you guys could get like the information as it was presented to us for the most part. Here's what I'm going to say about all of this so far. I believe a bit of both sides, but I don't think either party is really good or bad in this. Each person remembers situations differently, and people can interpret the truth in different ways, even from the same information. We are bystanders reading all of these documents and watching all of these breakdown videos and forming opinions on these situations from the biased narratives of the affected individuals. What I'm going to say might be controversial to an extent. I think both of these people just need to ignore each other and take everything offline. It's obvious to me from just reading the screenshots and not even touching on a lot of what they were trying to put as clarifying context and like the big paragraph breaks between everything, that these two people are just not meant for each other, not meant for a relationship, not meant as friends. There's an insane amount of immaturity between the both of them that I'm sure in a few more years they could potentially look back on and shake their heads about for the most part. Sometimes it's okay to admit to yourself that you're not in the right mental headspace to be in a relationship. There are several points where their claims are contradicted in their own screenshots, and I'm not going to get too much more into it than that, because at the end of the day, it's possible for them to interpret situations differently from one another, and it's also possible to have trauma from a relationship without that relationship necessarily having been abusive in nature, which is kind of where I draw like a bit of an issue with Kirst constantly saying that she formed a trauma bond with Fraser, because I don't necessarily think that's what it was. All of these sections of Kirst saying that Fraser would gloat to her about being able to make her famous, the times that Fraser kept saying that he was happy to pay her rent to get her out of their shared place, him wanting her to move in because he knew that her situation would eventually escalate, which it did, could all be honest attempts to be nice and help her. In the same vein, Kirst is also valid in thinking that things worked against her because it made her more reliant on him in the long run, because she didn't have anywhere else to turn, and she also is valid in her frustrations being around the dog after he attacked her. Being bad for each other doesn't mean that you are a bad person, and I think both of them need to take that into consideration and learn to be more open in their communication, more mindful of their partners in the future, and especially in Kirst's situation, since a lot of this seems to stem from insecurity, she needs to learn to stand up for herself more in the moment and not bottle everything up until it explodes like this. I'm happy she has mentioned a few times that she's in therapy, and I hope her therapist can help her learn to be more independent. Let me discuss some court of public opinion kind of things now in regards to the Kirst versus Fraser stuff, then I'll move on to the more public opinions on like other stuff in regards to this fall of the British commentary empire. Firstly, most people in the sidelines are arguably pretty upset that Kirst decided to take this time to take the spotlight off of Alice in order to air out her own issues. Kirst coming out with her story wouldn't really have been much of an issue to me personally if she didn't directly try to tie this into the Alex allegations with the comparison between him and Fraser. That comparison is what I feel really sparked Fraser into this back and forth, because if she would have just left it all with Fraser is a piece of shit, he probably knew all along because they were friends, this probably wouldn't have taken so much attention away from Alice's story in general. There's a big difference between validating someone's story with your own versus inserting yourself, which unfortunately I think is what ended up happening here. None of this was related to Alice and Alex beyond the fact that Fraser made the comment at the start of everything, which yeah, I do see some of the original point that Kirst was trying to make about Fraser making things about himself, but that is something he admits to himself in the original Instagram screenshots as well, and something he also admits a few times within his own defense document against Kirst's allegations against him. Now, as far as how Fraser's career is going from all of this, it appears fine, all things considered. His video views on his main channel kind of fluctuate a lot depending on the topic, so there isn't really a very notable difference to me, at least. Looking through his comments on his newest video at the time of me scripting this, the JoJo Siwa one, there's occasionally a comment mentioning Alex demanding a video be made about him and his situation, and a couple asking him to make a video addressing Kirst's allegations against him. I'm not sure if he's removing any other comments about his situation and these slip through the cracks or not. I'm not smart enough to try to find out if there are like blocked keywords on someone's channel without commenting and trying to figure it out, and I'm not doing all of that. Someone can investigate and get back to me on it. The only reason why I think that Kirst's name could be blocked is because her name isn't really mentioned in any of these comments that I found in which people are asking Fraser to address things. Only things like girlfriend and ex-girlfriend. There is a set of comments from what looks like a burner account spamming the letter K over and over and over again, and that could have something to do with the promise of releasing a 7-hour long video if there's like enough likes and comments on the video and not to do with Kirst, but I don't know. There's also a metric fuck ton of comments on this video alone, and my computer literally won't even bring all of them up for me to go through, so there is a possibility that I missed something to note. Looking at Fraser's Social Blade Next does show that around the time Kirst posted her latest Twitter thread on him, he did seem to lose about 10k subscribers, but as a creator looking at the back end of YouTube, there seems to be some kind of issue going on where your YouTube analytics aren't really loading in the usual way, so I don't know if that's affecting Social Blade, because this also says that he abruptly gained 10k subscribers at different intervals. There's always speculation when you see like abrupt large jumps in numbers like this, because it can be caused by bots or purchasing numbers, but I don't have any insight one way or another if he's doing that. As far as this specific scandal, he's not really experiencing a negative slope in views or subs though, as far as I can see. Minor thing to note is that it does look like he deleted or privated something on August 2nd, not sure what it was. Then we get into the community tab post that he made linking to one of his documents debunking Kirst's allegations against him, and the responses, as expectedly, are all pretty positive in Fraser's favor. Again, not sure if this is just because of genuine support or because of filtered comments, although community tabs generally are more engaged with your subscribers than like just randos in my experience. Most of the comments are condolences that Fraser is going through all of these things, and some of them are opinions on Kirst as a person, and some are in regards to Kenji's behavior around her and speculation revolving that specifically. It's actually because of the people using Kirst's name pretty freely through these comments that I imagine that her name isn't filtered, because I don't think that you can filter things specifically from video to video, community tab post to community tab post. I think the filtering is specific to like the entire channel, but again, I could be wrong about that. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you need to. As of scripting this, Fraser doesn't appear to have made any new statements in regards to Kirst's claims, so let's circle back to the general public perception of everything that's happened thus far. I know that this has been quite the journey, so let's go back on topic to the hot steaming pile of shit of the hour, which is Alex. With all of the back and forth from numerous third-party statements and the Kirst versus Fraser debacle, it can be pretty easy to get lost in all of the information, but we have to remember who really started all of this mess. Alex himself. Other creators who have been within the drama and commentary spaces longer than I have already pointed out that Alex has been a clout chaser for just about as long as he's had a platform, doing whatever he needed to do in order to gain views and attention, starting from humbler beginnings of running a Discord server for another creator.
Well, the thing is, he created the Discord. He offered to create the Discord for me because I had no idea how to do it. And then he was basically running the Discord on my behalf. This is back when, like you said, he had 200 subs. So he found a way. I mean, I wasn't a big YouTuber, still not. But I was certainly bigger than him at the time, and he's like, oh, I'm going to find a way to, like, leech off this guy. I mean, he fucked off shortly after that. Once he started gaining subs and getting
only to apparently abandon that role as soon as he started getting attention on his own channel.
Got the traction to his channel was a shout-out and collab video from fellow commentary creator Pyrocynical in 2017.
Alex then either began himself or helped others spread misinformation and false claims against creators he viewed as competition to his brand. Or allegedly, at least, that's people's theories. According to many people, Alex has always been a manipulative asshole from the start of everything. When Alice first started posting vague tweets and vague TikToks, it didn't take long for people to put the clues together and figure out that she was talking about him. While everything she's shown he did to her was really horrific, how surprising was this information really when you look back at everything else that he's been doing publicly for years? I wonder at what point did people in Alex's audience start reaching out to him for a statement on everything? Was it during the vague posting stage, or after Alice officially named him? Was it after her document dropped? Did Alex attempt any sort of damage control, or did he pretty much fuck off right away? At this point, I wonder how many people in either of their audiences were reaching out to Alex for statements, and if Alex was trying to do any kind of damage control in the comments of his videos. Due to Alex's reputation on stepping on others to get ahead on YouTube, a lot of people have been speculating how and when he might try to make his return. Which, off script here, I do want to note, like, a very random Twitter account that I stumbled across looking for screenshots for different things, right? And this account does seem to be like a burner account or a sock puppet account or however you want to phrase it. But basically, it's an account that was just started pretty recently with no followers and is posting things exclusively about Alex in a positive light. Now, this is major tinfoil hat talk because I have absolutely no proof of this whatsoever, but it's my theory that this bot burner sock puppet account could actually have something to do with Alex himself. And the reason why I think that is because this account is posting things like pretty positively in light of Alex, right? And I think that this is specifically to kind of test the waters, so to speak, of the public perception of him after it's been, a few months since like the allegations dropped. Most of the posts that I see coming from this account, which at the time that I first looked at it, there was only like 3 or 4 or something like that. But basically, it wasn't getting a lot of views. And so in turn, it also wasn't getting that many negative comments. And what I think is that at some point when people start posting more positive receptions of Alex and people responding more positively, trying to like bury the allegations and all the bad shit that happened basically, I think after that, Alex could potentially come back. Anyway, back to my script. Some people theorize he might go for the option of coming back to his original audience with promises that he changed for the better, went to therapy, and took efforts to make amends. Another theory in relation to him coming back to his original audience is that perhaps he is opting to take legal action against Alice and her allegations for the damage that they've done to his reputation, which again, might be part of the reason why he stayed so eerily silent this entire time. Other people, however, believe he's going to try to come back and build a new audience, one more right-leaning and attempting to cater to the women-hating Andrew Tate Sneeko kind of people, possibly spinning a narrative of him being pushed to a breaking point and lashing out against Alice. Regardless of what he decides, he might be running out of time to make a decision. Unless they've changed it more recently than I'm aware, YouTube allows you to be inactive on the site for roughly 6 months before they demonetized your channel. And inactivity includes like you need to post like a video or even just a community tab post within 6 months. I guess we'll have to see which route he takes around that marker, which would be coming up in roughly about 2 months according to his latest upload on his main ImAllexx channel. In addition to just the YouTube TOS standing against his impromptu hiatus, Alex might also find himself in different legal troubles unrelated to Alice. Does he have any sponsors? When you take sponsorship, you have to sign contracts and make obligations to post about them in a timely manner. Do you think in order to fulfill those obligations from sponsors too stupid to drop him, that he will upload content and pretend that it was pre-recorded, turn off the comments and just kind of roll with it? Will he try to hire a PR team to chat LGBT a response for him to cry out into a camera, I guess time will tell sooner or later. As for Alice, she needs to be careful, extremely careful in light of everything that she's done in order to get her story out there. According to our document, Alex is not beneath stalking someone. If he will order packages to her house, if he will send flowers or notes, there is a real possibility of him just showing up onto her doorstep. Make sure you are doing what you need to do in order to protect yourself to the best legal capacity that you're able to. People will do the unthinkable if they think that they can't change something to their favor. We've seen men murder over less. I think I've covered pretty much everything I could in regards to this, so we're going to end the video here before I just lose my mind. I know this has been a ton of information and just a lot to remember and get through. So just remember, take care of yourself. Get some sleep. If anything new comes up, I'll try to cover what I can if I have time to. This video has been kind of dragging to get through just because of life issues. If I don't see any updates, feel free to comment them whenever they happen, I guess, and I'll research accordingly. Click all the buttons that you need to for the algorithm. I really appreciate it. This video, like all of my content, is brought to you by Patreon, so thank you so much to Ippo, Alec, Ashley, Mel, and Clint. And also thank you to the channel member, Megan May. I hope everyone stays safe. If you find yourself in a situation like Alice's, please remember that you are not alone, and there are resources out there for you to get help. It might take a while for things to get better, but they can, and they will. It might seem kind of hopeless when you first try to make your life what you want it to be, but you are alive and capable of amazing things. This is Finn, signing off. Until next time.
I can't move on till I let go. I feel so lost, never at home. Need to be strong, every breath hold. 'Cause I can't move on till I let go.